If you would all please stand for the flag salute. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thank you all for coming tonight. It's wonderful to see an audience. I'd like to remind the audience and the board members to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. And tonight's board meeting is being live streamed on Ukiah Unified's YouTube channel. The link is accessible from our website. Please, trustees, keep your microphones on when you speak into them. If audience members wish to address the board, please fill out a public comment form and give it to the executive assistant, Debbie, before the meeting. Public comment is taken for items not on the agenda. We have 5 minutes, and public comment for items on the agenda is taken at the time of the item. So, report out from closed session.
The board took action on item B7 to deny the leave of absence request. It was approved in roll call vote, 7-0. And the board took action on item D6 to approve the leave of absence request, roll call vote, 7-0. Additionally, on item B8, the board voted to accept the claim that was presented, and that was approved 7-0 via roll call vote.
And so I used Trustee Mulgard's advice again to have a schedule for us tonight to see if we can move along or not. So there are some things that could be lengthy on here, so we would be getting out around 10 o'clock unless.
What's your best case scenario?
That's why I hope my worst case scenario.
Okay. Worst case.
I'm hoping. So just feel free to talk as long as you'd like, but just bear in mind we are hoping to be out by 10. Next, we have our student advisory report. Alexis. Oh, sorry. I skipped. Approval of agenda. Anyone move to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Check that quickly. Now it's your turn.
All right. So it's only been about 3 weeks since the last board meeting that I was here, so not a lot has happened. Most winter sports are coming to a close at the high school now, so this whole week has been full of senior nights for boys and girls, soccer and basketball. And I know for sure that girls varsity soccer is going into playoffs, so that's exciting for them. And then alongside the winter sports ending, the spring sports are starting. So all the spring sports are doing tryouts or, just starting practices this week. And the next big thing that leadership is planning is Midnight Madness, which is basically our version of March Madness, the big basketball tournament. And so it's just going to be like small teams of students who sign up to play, and you don't have to have any basketball experience at all. And I know that because I played last year. And basically just do mini half-court games in a big bracket-style tournament. And yeah, that's it.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Public comment for items not on the agenda. We do have one item. Dr. Trotter. Oh, I need to remind you. You got your own timer? We do have timers. Wow. So I just want to remind you that you have 5 minutes, and Nicole is going to have the timer going.
Start. I'll get under
This
that.
one's, yeah, 5
Okay.
this one.
First of all, I think I'd rather be in the ER than on the school board.
Sometimes we would too, even as patients.
And that's very few occupations I would say that about. Thank you for being on the board. First, kudos. I was really impressed with the newspaper article about the Native American classes. Also, I noticed a while back that you had doubled the number of college-ready students at Ukiah Unified. The number of, you have to have 5 or 7 courses that allow you to apply. And with the yard groups helped with the first 5 reading program at Calpella, and the Rothrocks there have made a big difference in the scores at Calpella. the article I gave you that is really the reason I came here was on Iceland. And it was so stunning that I just couldn't believe it. 1998, apparently you could not walk down the capital of Iceland. It starts with an R, I can't pronounce it, because some 14 or 15-year-old would mug you because they were drunk. They had the worst substance abuse rates in Europe. 42% had gotten drunk in the last month if you were a 14 or 15-year-old. 23% smoked cigarettes and 17% used marijuana in the last month. All those are single digits now. What did they change? After-school programs. They gave each parent a $325 card for art, soccer, music, sports, or whatever, and built facilities. And they made the parents sign an agreement that, it's going to be hard in 5 minutes, make the parents sign an agreement that they had to do something with the kids twice a month on the weekends. That was their whole program. And that's what made the difference in Iceland. I thought it was a fascinating article. As opposed to 58% of the fifth graders in Ukiah Unified were overweight or obese. And if you're not active at age 12, the chances that you will become active are like zip. Okay? So the ARC is a big success, right? The Eagle Peak pool, when you looked at the costs, because of the school's restrictions and, all the laws and stuff, it's a $1.3 million pool. Can't do that. I'm too old to start a $1.3 million pool. 17 years at the ARC was enough. But if you would allow us to buy the playing fields at the middle school, I think we could put a pool, a soccer field, a little baseball field for tiny kids, refurbish the tennis courts. I don't know if you've already had your 7-Eleven group report out and make decisions on that. If your house burns down, you lose track of things. That's already been decided.
It's just been decided to declare it surplus.
Oh, surplus. Okay, so surplus. Okay, 2 minutes to go. Okay, so you put the pool there for a lot less money. And then you have a 100-day summer camp at Eagle Peak. Mom or dad dries up. You have school teachers there doing math and English during the day. And you sign your kids up for 2 hours of something while they get to go play soccer or basketball inside the gym or something. And I had this at the Methodist church where I grew up. My mother would take the 4 boys first, like 8:01. The station wagon would pull up in front of the youth center. And it was 4:49, or whatever, and Mom would come back, okay? It was Mom Summer's program. She also signed us up with the Marines once. There was anyway, I'm going into that. So, Mom had a hard time with 4 boys. So, try to do free soccer fields. I'll build you a free soccer field at Calpella and Oak Manor. Again, there's a lot of regulations. Sherman was very nice and asked for $25,000 for an aerator so they could do it. I couldn't sell that to the ER group. But I do think that there is this possibility to the city, the school district, and volunteers doing more activity-wise, somehow, some way. Check out this article. Thank you very much. Do you have a medical question about the flu?
Dr. Trotter, thank you for your never-ending dedication to our community with your community support. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you all very much. Go Horns. Okay.
And is it true that as long as it's before March 1st, it's still worthwhile to get a flu shot?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much over.
Okay.
But it has been an extraordinary season. And for the first time, H3N2 is the first time we've ever seen a genetic hybrid of human, bird, and swine flu. Never seen that.
Great.
Just
On that
feel
note,
good about the future.
we will go to our employee organizations with brief report, starting with CSEA.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening.
I'm back for a little bit. We'll see. I'm going to keep it short because I know Terry has lots to say. So we would like to commend Superintendent Kumin for the way in which the collaboration of the budget cutting ideas came to light, the transparency and the ability to have a voice in the hard decision to reduce spending somehow alleviates the uncertainty in some way. We appreciate that. I know our classified staff feel the anxiety and uncertainty whenever budget reductions are discussed and/or needed. With that said, we would hope the board would ensure that any and all budget cuts that are voted on would be cuts that have the least impact on not only our classified staff, but ultimately the students, as I think we all could agree, are the most important entity to any school district. So I know you guys have a hard job, and budget cuts are always extremely hard, and everybody gets very excited about it and very scared. That's how they provide for their families, but I really would hope you would take that to heart. I know you guys have a hard job, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Lisa. UTA.
Good evening, Board. I'll start my report by telling you what we've been doing this past month. 12 teachers attended the CTA Good Teaching Conference last weekend. It's always a great conference, and teachers come back energized and excited. UTA will be voting on our bylaws next month. And then just a couple of plugs for people running for office. The California Teachers Association is endorsing Gavin Newsom for governor. He's been a champion of equal public education for all, community building, and social justice since first entering office in 1997. As California continues to rank near the bottom nationally in per pupil spending, and teachers still spend thousands for classroom supplies, he supported Prop 55 in 2016. Prop 55 continues the increased state income taxes on the wealthy from Prop 30, generating billions for public education. Newsom brought the nation's first truly universal health care plan to all of San Francisco's uninsured residents, resulting in more than 80% of the previously uninsured being covered by this unprecedented health care program. Newsom's top priorities are education, economic development, creating jobs, and reducing poverty, protecting the environment and social justice, ensuring California continues to lead by example while actively resisting any attempt by the Trump administration to take us backwards. The California Teachers Association is also endorsing State Assemblyman Tony Thurmond for State Superintendent of Schools. Thurmond is a state assemblyman representing Richmond and East San Francisco Bay. He's served as a school board trustee and city councilman, as well as a respected leader of nonprofits for youth and a champion of disadvantaged students. Thurmond is fighting to provide more money for preschool and after-school programs by shifting $455 million from our criminal justice system into our early education and after-school programs. He's working to expand school-based health, mental health, and social service programs to remove barriers that impede the ability of many of our students to learn. Tony Thurmond is the most qualified candidate to serve as the head of California's public school system. His lifetime of commitment to public education, public service, and our youth make him the most qualified of all the candidates for the critical office of State Schools Chief. I want to thank all of the people here tonight in support of the garden program, and I really want to thank in public the incredible garden specialists who do a job that is really, I commend them because I've been trying to fill in at that job, and it's taking everything I can to keep up. It's always very difficult to deal with budget cuts. I agree with Lisa. Ideally, when cuts are made, there's a hope that the students will be the last to feel them, not the first. There have been various requests for input with regards to budget cuts from the entire staff of UUSD schools being asked to leadership and district advisory committee ranking the list created by employees. Yet last week, when I sat here in the budget meeting and the time came to begin making decisions on those cuts, I felt that you, the members of our school board, seemed to set those advisory suggestions aside and move forward with your own ideas as to which items should be cut. Sadly, not even our own district leadership was maybe not willing or able to protect our students' access to their outdoor garden classrooms. The one and only instructional program cut on this list is the garden program for grades pre-K through 8. I know the board has heard and will hear tonight much feedback from the community, teachers, and students, and my hope is that you will take these letters and comments into account when making these budget cut decisions. It's important to give our youngest students a voice in our district decision-making process. I would like to end my UTA report with this. I'm always amazed at the intrinsic knowledge our students have when it comes to the garden program knowledge of life and activity, health and strength, pleasures and satisfactions of all or certain things, like seeing a plant grow, watching a worm wriggle in your hand, happiness, beatitude, contentment, and the love they feel for the garden. It is theirs. They built it, and they continue to thrive in it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those. Next, we have our leadership team report, which is Chris Sweet. Oh, yeah, I do.
Okay. First off, I want to say thank you. I wasn't able to be here at the last board meeting, but I watched it online, and I really want to say thank you to all. Well, because I knew the issue of my facilities was coming up. So yeah, so I watched it, and I just have to say, despite that, there's a lot of ups and downs with this. It's your heartfelt approach and your responses to it. I really appreciate that. So I could tell you all really care about it. So myself and South Valley really appreciates that.
Well, I appreciate hearing that you watched it because I fought years to get it on YouTube. And then it got on YouTube and nobody's watching, and I thought,
Oh, we're watching.
Now I'm embarrassed.
We're watching. Holly Rogers is watching right now, actually, too. So tonight, the presentation, I'm piloting a new standardized model to our presentations. And the concept here is that I'm going to spend a minute on the leadership update, and then a minute on the academics of my school, and then a minute on the culture. So let's see how this goes. It's supposed to be 3 slides, but I use Prezi, so there's no such thing as slides in that, so we'll give this a shot.
Tricky.
All right. Okay, so our leadership update, despite all the time that we spent on the budget, which I don't want to get into, we have talked about a few other things, hard to imagine. But I want to point out a couple things. First of all, we are, a few of us in the district, including Deb, are a part of a cohort at UC Davis, and we're spending a lot of time on how to run PLCs effectively and the way that they were designed by DeFur. One of the co-authors was Dr. Maney. He is one of the people that's helping us learn about it, and we just, and Deb will tell you more about it, secured a grant that will bring that team, that cohort idea up here to Northern California, and it's very exciting. So Christy, Dara, and myself are a part of it, and I was a little hesitant at first, but it's really great, so I'm happy to announce that. Second, right now, I talked to a few of the principals. Their thing is it's crunch time, getting ready for SBAC, right? Make sure the collaborative conversations are going strong, that we're close reading, just getting ready for the test-taking skills it takes to take these things online. So that's where a lot of the schools are putting a lot of their efforts currently. And then finally, we have, you probably noticed, but we've adopted Saturday schools in all schools. Currently, every school has either done at least one, and I'm speaking mostly to the elementary schools and middle schools, because South Valley and the high school have been doing it for a while. But everyone's either done it or doing it this weekend for the first time, so we're on board there. And the concept is to recover ADA, that's lost ADA, and then help kids who are struggling. So those are the general ideas. I'm sure there's a lot of other things I could have talked about, but those are the main 3 that I figured I'd point out. As for our school, on the academic part, we're in the middle of WASC. The full 6 years is a big one. It seems like I do it every single year. I'm tired of this. With that in mind, on the academic side, we're focusing on mastery learning. I asked the teachers to take it on. They did it. It's been a great experiment, and it's working. The kids are having to work things through completion as opposed to just getting done whatever they feel like and then just moving on. So doing mastery learning, all the teachers on board, that's the model that we're using there, which is the way for the kids to progress, check their own progress. We're doing a lot of common assessments. Every week we're either doing a common school-wide reading assessment or math assessment. Every class, doesn't matter the subject, we're all doing it. And then finally, I just want to point out, we've been doing Common Core for a long time, small school staff, really great people. We've been doing it a long time, so we're continuing down that line, spending a lot more time working on the project-based model, using close reading, whatnot, and that will lead over to the big picture, which I'll talk about here in a second. So everything else you can pretty much see. We are known for our culture. There's nothing less to say about that, nothing more either, but we talked about the advisory, and we've been doing that for a couple of years, a lot of social emotional learning around Common Core concepts, which has led us into the next part, which I've mentioned to you before, and I sent around to you guys what's the, Yeah, it's the online brochure. I wanted to print it out just so you had it there. You can take it home for reading, just so you understand what Big Picture is more. Holly Rogers went in my stead to Rhode Island, to a large, gathering of people from around the world, to talk about how to implement Big Picture, especially at the starting stage. She came back. She was super excited to the point where she said, "Maybe I won't retire based on this." So, but I don't think that's the case anymore. Anyhow, so that's for you to look at and ask me any questions, and we'll move forward. But again, just a quick, it's where the kids will be doing internships during the school day, in addition to doing core content. So, talk to me more about that. And then finally, this is what I've been spending much of my time making new ADA, and that's Alena Harper. So, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Any comments or questions?
He did it. I was going to ask for a picture. That's exactly.
There it is.
You have very cute ADA.
Thank you.
Yeah, Trustee Van Zandt.
You were speaking really quickly because you wanted to keep in your minute, which
Yes.
is fine, and we don't need to talk a lot. But I did, maybe there is never an appropriate time, but I had the advantage of learning more from you what the Big Picture Learning Project was
Yeah.
all about. And I know you're not going to get into it tonight, but it's so interesting and so cool. I would suggest you, Deb, consider calling a reporter at the UDJ and maybe kind of getting it, maybe there's one here. Well, I didn't, having a larger, hi, but a larger conversation with the newspaper or some way to get the information out. It's such a neat program, and I'm really excited we're bringing it here.
Great. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Next, we have our acceptance of donations. We have donation of $50 to Oak Manor for books, and a donation for $2,331 from Jennifer Harris to UUSD for a total of $2,381. Is there a motion to accept those donations?
I'll move to accept with gratitude.
Thank you.
I
I'll
second.
it.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're right ahead of my schedule. Yes.
Jennifer always done this to the outdoor center in Redwood Valley. Did she change? Oh, I'm sorry.
RVOEP.
Did she, is she just sort of changing her direction for us?
I don't really know, B.
You don't know? Penny might know. Penny, hasn't Jennifer always given this to the Redwood Valley Outdoor Center when she's given donations? She has.
B, we can get back to you on that. I don't
Okay.
think that Penny will have that information.
Okay, thank
Usually donations come in through the school sites or programs, so I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have item D1, which is review action regarding disposal of surplus property process.
Good evening, everyone. Our 7-Eleven Advisory Committee presented its final report in December, and at that time, the board declared our 2 unused school sites as surplus property. Since then, there's been several outside agencies working on disaster relief from the recent wildfires. They've approached the district to discuss the possibility of using the property for housing. And so, as you recall, at the January 18th meeting, Steve Dunnicliffe from the County of Mendocino presented information regarding a feasibility study for adaptive reuse of Redwood Valley Elementary School. There was representatives from HUD and FEMA here at that time to also share on other projects that had been successful with that type of a project. And now the board had directed staff to consult with council regarding our legal requirements for selling, leasing, or developing the surplus property, and to prepare a request for proposals to solicit information from planners and/or developers regarding that, and then also beginning the process for rezoning the property. So I'm happy to say that Aaron Stagg from School and College Legal Services is here tonight to talk to you about the disposal of surplus property process.
Thank you, board members, for having me. As Penny mentioned, and as I had a chance to watch the meeting from last, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago, after January's meeting and after the presentation on adaptive reuse for the Redwood property, Penny and Deb reached out and asked me to create an outline, which for those of you who worked your way through it, I'm sorry that the ed code is that long, but that's the condensed version. I can send you the long version if you want it. As we started talking and formulating what an RFP would look like and thinking about this in terms of, as I understood the assignment, it was to explore the legal requirements to sell, lease, or develop surplus real property for housing. It became clear that there are 2 tracks that are possible to take, and before we spent too much time and overhead going down either one, it's going to be necessary to get some input from the board on which direction is the way that we're looking at the Redwood property. You'll see in the outline that I prepared, and I'm going to be as succinct as possible, doing my best to stay on schedule. The 2 tracks, one of them is called joint occupancy. This we're seeing in larger districts, it's being done a lot to do workforce housing. We've seen some successful projects in San Diego on this front, and Berkeley has begun to explore it. That is joint occupancy, and it is a completely different section of the ed code than if we are just looking at a straight surplus property lease or sale. Under the surplus property lease or sale, the ed code has very specific requirements as to what public agencies will be offered the property first. There are also separate sections, the Naylor Act, that goes into the recreational and park districts. But under that ed code section, and then there are also government code sections, affordable low-income and moderate-income housing developers on both the private and the public sector are on the list that have priority for lease or sale. So at this point, I wanted to just make myself available to answer questions as well as I can, and also to be here to hear what the input is from the board as we continue to explore these options. Is it looking more at a joint occupancy project, or are we looking at how we would begin to follow the ed code requirements in order to lease or sell the property outright?
Highlighters, anyone? Trustee Van Zandt?
I guess I'd just like to clarify, what are we doing today? Are we making a choice between these 2 options?
We are asking for direction, and that direction could be to give you more information about it. It could be to come back with an RFP to get more information on joint occupancy as compared to doing the surplus property disposal. It's not an action item, it's not a resolution, you are not declaring your intent to sell or lease, but as we start the paperwork and start the notice to the required agencies and look at the Naylor Act, these are 2 very different tracks. They have different goals, they have different outcomes, they have different funding opportunities for the district, they have different community opportunities for the district. And so it's important that it's important to me that I don't spin wheels on something that is not in the board's interest for the students and for the community. And so I wanted a chance to come hear what the board was interested in pursuing, and then get some direction to continue to explore with Deb and with Penny what this RFP looks like. That's sort of how this whole process started, is I'm like, yes, let's draft an RFP. What are we asking for? Are we asking for a proposal for a developer to come in on a joint occupancy project, or are we asking for proposals to sell or lease the property?
Are those 2 different RFPs?
Yes, they are. And there are different requirements before you can do those RFPs, depending on which one you take.
So it sounds like we do want to make that decision.
Well, it's not a decision.
But I mean, fairly soon. Okay.
Yeah, our goal was to educate the board about the next steps after after we declare something surplus, and then get some direction from the board.
Trustee Barrett?
Just speaking for myself, and I don't think we've spent a lot of time discussing the 2 different options. I thought we were mainly looking at sale or lease.
Trustee Mogard?
I would want to know if we weren't being joint tenants so that we had more control over the property, if we were hypothetically to put it out to an RFP, it was bid on by a nonprofit housing developer, is there any way, if we sold the land, what would be the mechanism for us to keep that in the low mod market for the next 100 years? And what would be our methodology to have at least, say, 33% filled with employees of the school district with a priority to teachers of special ed, or something like that? I don't know how specific we can get, but.
The short answer is I would have to look further, but if you're actually reaching the point where it's an RFP going out to the developers, it assumes that we've either concluded that the Naylor Act doesn't apply, or if the Naylor Act applies, the city or the county or the Parks and Recreation districts don't have an interest in the Naylor Act property on the school site. The entire school site is not necessarily Naylor Act property. It would then also assume that we had gone through our government code and ed code requirements of offering it to local agencies, local housing authorities, nonprofit housing authorities. There's also a section where we have to offer it in writing to the Director of General Services, the UC Regents, the state of California. So there's a whole list of entities. It's not a right of first refusal, but it's a right to negotiate with the district. And then once that has been completed, we would then be looking at the point of what the RFP would look like if it were just a general invitation to submit for the purchase of the sale or lease. So it's difficult to say at this point how the district could maintain that control and maintain that affordable housing without knowing what the other agency's intent is.
I'm assuming that we are able to get rid of all those other agencies and do what we want. But I understand, easier said than done. Is there any other school district that has used joint occupancy as a methodology to avoid everything you just listed?
I have not seen it phrased that way. Generally, I've seen it used to explore, for example, San Diego was in the news recently because the Cal Department of Ed just approved their request. One of their former elementary school sites is being developed. It's going to have a multi-use room for the district as well as the community. And then it's going to have some market rate housing as well as affordable housing, specifically for the teachers and classified staff in the district. And so the way their RFP was phrased was just a joint occupancy. We have 5 school sites, and they had 5 different sites there. Tell us what you can do. I mean, it was one of the most wide open specs I've ever seen in an RFP, because it was, talk to us, tell us what the options are. Of course, there were, as I mentioned, Berkeley just finished up their feasibility study, and it went into exploring whether or not there was an interest from the district employees and teachers and staff to have workforce housing, whether or not there were any sites that would support that.
So stipulated, you know.
So, yeah, and so there is more control over joint occupancy, but as any situation, when you have control, there's also more risk. And so it's that balance, which is one of the reasons we wanted direction from the board before we prepared an RFP either way or sent notice to the agencies we're required to.
Trustee Van Sant?
In a joint occupancy situation, does all of the housing have to be reserved for school district employees?
I don't know the answer to that I haven't seen that in the code, but I have not looked at if the state is requiring that. I mean, because all joint occupancy has to be approved by the State Department of Education. And so I am not sure whether or not they have sort of a guidelines that I haven't seen, or I haven't looked at all of the ones that have been approved to see. That's not spelled out in the code. The code section on joint occupancy is very general. So I would have to do a little bit more research into what applications have been approved.
I'm kind of interested in joint occupancy. I feel, I don't know, it sounds like I guess I'm thinking in a community where workforce housing is not a problem, then you wouldn't want to do it. But we are in a community where we have a real hard time with housing for our workforce. So I don't know, I'm intrigued by it. Sounds like we can avoid a bunch of stuff, possibly.
But exclusively for the workforce?
Well, that would be an important question for me. I mean, we're not looking at a huge number of units here. I think it's like 30 units,
21.
right? 21, that's not very many. So we have 400 employees, 500 employees? 800 employees. So that's not, I mean, even if it was limited to school district employees, some loud things, even if it was limited to school district employees, you know, there's a lot of employees in Redwood Valley.
I don't fully understand. So if we did the joint occupancy, then what would the builder receive out of the deal? I mean, I don't quite.
Land. A free ground lease essentially is how the other districts have formatted it. It's not, there's not a requirement that would it be, but the idea is that they get to use the land. It's limited to 66 years. They get 66 years of school district land, but they come in and build. And then, depending on how the agreements are structured, and I've seen them run the gamut, they may be the ones responsible for collecting the rent. Their benefit is prime property.
So
Which
they
this
may not be
This is-
that
I don't know,
prime to
this
them.
Trustee Arkin?
Are we in the process of rezoning? Isn't that what we were talking about at the very beginning last time? That if we're going to go forward, we need to rezone first? So are we, or?
Penny, do you want to go up and address that? And while she's going up there, I think important to me, whichever way we go, is, you know, if the district is going to manage this process in some way, I don't know that we have the staff capacity to do that. So I'd like to limit the impact on staff, whatever we do, limit the impact on staff and.
Or pay for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the financial impact on the district.
Cloning Gabe is kind of expensive.
And
Penny.
As far as the rezoning, I've had discussions with the county planning department, facilitated by Steve Dunnicliff. Thank you very much, Steve. And I've talked with Chris Watt at LACO, and they've presented a proposal for that, for the rezoning process for them to handle for us. So we just received it recently.
And Penny, the cost of the proposal?
32,000 something for, there were different components involved with that, but.
Trustee Montpere?
I'm just assuming that we wouldn't make any expenditure such as that until we were guaranteed ahead of time, in whatever way you do that, that the project could be achieved, that you could build there or you could do that.
I'm just going to add, under the general surplus property disposal process, there is a government code section. Once Naylor Act entities have had the opportunity to either negotiate the lease or a sale, there is then a requirement that the local zoning agency, it says shall rezone. The district bears the cost of the actual cost to the local zoning agency, but it has to be in compliance with the general plan, if there are any specific plans, and in conformance with the use, the surrounding use. I am not familiar enough with the county zoning ordinances to know whether or not residential or the adaptive reuse would be there. But there is that when you're going through the typical ed code disposal process, that once the Naylor Act process is done, there is this requirement that says the rezoning shall be done with these limitations.
So I sort of feel like we don't have enough information maybe to make this decision, which way we want to go, because I agree that we don't want to use a lot of staff time for it. So if you're doing the joint occupancy, is that going to require a lot of district energy and time?
It depends. It depends on the proposal that you accept. It depends on the developer that you work with. It depends on whether or not the district is running the role of landlord, if it's going to be rentals. Joint occupancy is relatively new when it comes to these housing projects, and so there's not a lot of examples out there. And I haven't seen any that are in this smaller range, which is not to say it can't be done, but most of the projects have been, because they have more, I won't say more of a need, but some more flexibility to look at it, have been in larger metropolitan areas.
Trustee Van Sant?
I agree that we need more information, but I mean, I understand we want to move forward as well. I can't tell which of these paths
Right.
would be more work.
We need
It sounds
some
like
advice.
both paths sound like a fair amount of work. But I do wonder if, I think your point, who would want to do this? I mean, I'm starting to question if this would be attractive to a developer. You can't say.
I'm going to defer that one to
Yeah.
someone who does real
It just
estate
doesn't sound like a
development.
very
Well, I
fun
mean, there's,
project for somebody.
here in Ukiah, there's Rural Communities Housing Development Corporation. We just had a group from south of here come in and do the senior housing that's next door to the Sun House that everybody really likes. They're called the PEP program. There's also Burbank Housing, which is a famous, not famous, but well-known housing developer in Sonoma. Plus, there's for-profit developers who could even be interested.
But would they be interested in a joint occupancy for 66
It's all
units?
about the money. It just matters if it pencils out to them, they're interested. They have no religious pro or con about joint occupancy. It's just if it pencils out. I wanted to volunteer Trustee Fernandez to be on a subcommittee, if that would be helpful, to help flesh out both ideas and bring them back.
What do you think? Seems like they need some fleshing.
Not flushing,
One way or
just
the other.
fleshing.
So how would we go about with doing that? Just,
Well, it would be it would be a superintendent's committee, and you could ask a couple of board members to be on it, work with Aaron, and probably Steve Duncliffe, and just kind of explore the options.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Mulgard. Who else would like to volunteer for that spot? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, sounds interesting.
Awesome.
Yes, it sounds interesting.
Yeah, yes, you will, Trustee Nelson? Two is enough, but, right? But there's space for a third if someone's really,
I feel way out of my league, so I'm happy to have Trustee Mulgard and Trustee Nelson participate. Thank you.
I've lived and breathed housing my entire life with my husband. I don't want any more.
Oh, I thought that meant you wanted to use your skill set.
I've already had multiple conversations with him about this.
okay, so then we will proceed with a subcommittee to look into this some more.
I will wait for further direction from Superintendent and from Penny, and I will look forward to working with the district as we explore all these options.
All right,
Thank you
Erin,
very
we're going to
much.
become
Thank you.
besties. Hey, the two.
Okay, next we have D2, which is approval of budget reductions. We have more.
I will just remind the board, we've been in a process to identify potential savings to our budget, and in the fall, our target amount was around $400,000. We know since that time, the January governor's budget proposal came out, it was positive. And yet we know we have obligations to our employee groups with our fair share formula, so it still is necessary to make budget reductions. We should always look at how to streamline our process and our budget to make sure we are efficient in serving kids. And so at our budget workshop, our special board meeting last week, the board moved some things over onto a shorter list. And just to remind the board, in the community, these are all of the budget ideas that have come forward. There are lots of them. It was staff and community members sent forward a lot of options. Some of them are more viable than others for multiple reasons, but at the last meeting, the board moved over items for more discussion and consideration at this board meeting.
This magically turned on. I was sitting up here wondering, what button do I press? And somebody turned this on magically. Thank you. Somebody who did. So we have a process that we're going to try and follow. But before I talk about that process, we have public comment. Are there any clarifying questions the board has before public comment? No? So let's see. We normally have, this is kind of awkward, but we normally have 5 minutes per speaker with a maximum of 15 minutes per item. For this one, we'd like to reduce it to 3 minutes a speaker and go for a maximum of 30 minutes so that more people might get an opportunity to talk. We have quite a few people here who submitted their sheets to speak. We have gotten a lot of emails from people, so we've all read those emails, and we appreciate you reaching out to us. So I would just ask that you be mindful of the time, because we have a lot on our agenda, and although we do want to hear your comments, we also don't want to be leaving too late tonight. So we are going to try and limit it to a maximum of half an hour and 3 minutes a speaker. But that doesn't mean you have to speak for 3 minutes. If you have something to say, it can be shorter as well. So,
Or if it's a repeated item.
yes,
And
or if
Zoe,
it's, yes.
I also wanted to add some schools dropped by some letters and some items for the board. I think this came from Ukiah, and so I just wanted to, I'll pass this down as we're going through.
So as a reminder, we're going to change it to 3 minutes for public comment. We ask that you state your name clearly when you address the board, and Nicole Glinser will set the timer. And if you've not completed when the timer rings, if you could please stop anyway. And you may leave any written documentation for us to review. Speakers are cautioned that under California law, no person is immune from liability for making intentionally false or defamatory comments regarding any person simply because those comments are made at a public meeting, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just starting at the top of the stack I have in order that perhaps they were turned in. So if you want to have everyone talk, you're going to have to be less than 3 minutes. Just bear that in mind. So Deborah Fennessy.
I just wanted to mention, I want to make sure that the public knows that we as a board have received dozens of emails and had dozens of conversations. I didn't know if they understood it was everybody, not just you, that everybody. Okay.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Deborah Fennessy. I'm from Capella. And of course, I want to thank you guys for all you do. And I'm here, of course, again, speaking on the garden. 3 years ago, I looked at my letter that I wrote, which was April 2nd, 2015. And you received my email, of course, about this whole thing. And I'm not going to go over it because you already know. As a person of our district for 22 and a half years now, the garden has been very dear to my heart, so is nutrition. And I really feel that our kids have embraced it so much. The last few years, when I first started with Terry DeSelke, she did grant writing for like $350,000, $400,000 for 8 years. We had the most amazing garden model out of all the schools. We went to Berkeley, we went to all the different schools, Occidental, and our school emulated that. And so we have, over the last 18 years, created these amazing gardens with these amazing supportive teachers that are well qualified. Our garden man, Dan, which you guys are going to see all these letters, these kids have written the most amazing letters. I have them from second grade, 3 classes from second. We have 2 from first. We have 2 from kindergarten. We have some from fourth. We have emails. And I told my kids, I'm not telling you what to write. You're going to talk about it because they're passionate. Their journals reflect interest. They are engaged. They have amazing drawings that go into the garden, into the bugs. And now this is my one student, Savannah, and she did this all of her on her own. In the garden, dear board members, in the garden we learned about plants and planting seeds. We have very fun learning with our friends. We also learn about parts of the flowers, like stem, leaf, and roots. Also droppers, those are the seeds, droppers, waters, float, wind. We love Dan the garden man. He's a great garden man. Garden is the best. Sincerely, Savannah. And these letters are all their writings. I did not correct them. I did not even, there's some really, you're going to have to look through them. Some of them are hard to read. But amazingly, she is an amazing student. But she's not the greatest student, but she was passionate. And they were all passionate. If you look through these, from the little kindergartners to the older kids to just the basic, ones like, I like the garden, So I'm going to give these to you. I'm not going to give you my journals because I need to keep those. But we really feel strongly that we know we have to cut. We have households, we have classrooms, we all cut budgets when we need to. We do everything we can do to cut. But don't take away our hands-on experience. We're a STEM school. We have to get our kids ready. And Capella, Redwood Valley, when I was there, we have always had a science program that is above and beyond. So just keep that in mind when you think about cutting garden. You're thinking about our STEM schools. and we have STEM right here. Can I leave these for you? Caitlin Gray, you can have all of these, and one Caitlin, a copy of mine. Oh, we should have one more journal though, I think.
Hi, my name is Caitlin Gregg. I'm a second-year teacher at Calpella. When we first heard about the cuts to the garden, I took a long time to reflect on what it means to my kids. For my kids, it's their chance to step out and really see what we're learning about in our science books and touch it. And that touch and that interaction means more to them than I can give them with a book or a video or a discussion. And that kind of learning is powerful. I'm here representing not only second grade, but kindergarten teachers as well. When I asked the kindergarten teachers what it meant to them for the garden, they told me that it's a connection between home and school, because gardening is something you don't just do at school, you do it at home. And it's a lifelong connection to a healthy lifestyle. And I think that's a very powerful comment. In addition to the garden, I noticed that the number one was cutting the funding for the snack at recess. I want to let you know that at Calpella, that's some of the only breakfast that my students get. Some of my students come to school hungry every day. And when they get in line and they have that snack at recess, it allows them to come back to my classroom for the next 2 hours and learn math and learn things in a healthy, fueled body. And to me, that is very important. To me, that $28,000 is a small fraction of a $5 million budget. And I would appreciate if you guys could maybe come out to Capella and see what that snack cart means to our children and see how that healthy fuel really does ramp them up to learn and to absorb those Common Core values and standards that we teach them. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. Thank you very much.
Next, Lisa Brager. Sorry, been whispering up here.
My name is Lisa Breger, and I'm a retired teacher from Ukiah Unified. And I don't think I'm going to read this letter because I sent it to you all, and I appreciate the responses I got. And I wanted to say that I've been a part of school gardens since they started, when we still had Hopland School. And the growth in the curriculum and the expectations and what the gardens provide is amazing. It's all the training that the coordinators have gone through, and the teachers. I went down for a week at Occidental myself, and it has been a long-term process. And I think that's probably the most important thing. If we stop funding this now, you can't just pick it up and start over again. I certainly wouldn't want to stop watering my gardens, because it doesn't, you'll lose so much. I also wanted to point out that Dr. Trotter mentioned the health of children. And that was one of the things that I brought up in my letter, was that we still have obesity as a huge issue, and related illnesses and conditions that children face. So I think getting them to eat healthy is an essential part of our academic and social emotional growth. If you're not healthy, if you're not well, then it really impacts your ability to learn. I also wanted to say that when the children are out there, and I had the pleasure of working with Peggy Backup at Nokomis, they are tasting things. They walk amongst the plants and they taste things. Mrs. Breger, can we eat this? I say, oh, we can eat flowers. Go ahead, taste it. So they are opening up their minds. And if if there's nothing more important, I did teach kindergarten, nothing more important to those children than trying something, getting them to try something new. And that lasts a lifetime. So I feel very strongly that we have to continue to support the gardens, and I hope you can find a way to do that.
Thank you. Next is Marissa Sizemore.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you again. My name is Marissa Sizemore, and I work for the district as a speech-language pathologist, but I'm not here in that capacity tonight. I believe that schools and school boards are the foundations of democracy and the democratic process. And with that in mind, I just wanted to comment about how dismayed I was to see our very own school board, who I greatly admire, seemingly ignore the input of our democratic process, the District Advisory Committee, as well as the input from the Leadership Network as well. So I just want to ask and encourage you to please keep the cuts away from students as much as possible. Please do try to keep the garden program. It's very, extremely important. I was looking forward to, and I hope we still can, see my daughter participate in it once she becomes she's not quite 3, so a few years out. And just please consider how any cuts you make, which I know we have to make some, will affect both staff and students, but especially our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Salisbury.
Good evening. I'm Sherry Salisbury. I'm a second grade teacher at Ukiah School, and I'm here to encourage the board to remove the garden program from your list of budget cuts. I don't know the politics around this issue. I just want to provide my perspective as a teacher who's been in the district for over 30 years and why I value the garden program. I'm not a gardener. However, I've done some research about gardening and all the positive impact that it can have on us. And I've listened to a lot of friends and colleagues that are gardeners. But most importantly, I want to tell you about what I've observed as a teacher in terms of my students participating in this program over the years. So most of us, I know, agree gardening can have a positive effect on the brain, the body, and the soul. But what I want to focus on right now is to share how I see the positive effect on my students' emotional well-being, their soul, and what I've observed. So time in the garden, I feel, allows team building. Time for team building promotes communication. That's so important, especially for our English language learners. So you think about if they're in this very natural environment with their peers, they're hearing language, they're expressing thoughts, they're building vocabulary, and they have a chance to feel successful. So maybe in the classroom, they're not at grade level in terms of reading. However, in the garden, they have a chance to be just as successful as someone else that's more academically successful. They feel a sense of purpose and responsibility. They gain a deep respect and responsibility for taking care of our planet. And this is not just something I've observed and noticed, but studies actually show that gardening activities lead to improved mood, better learning experience, and decreased anxiety. Self-esteem can be increased and stress can be decreased. And yes, even young children, I'm a second grade teacher, even young children suffer from anxiety and pressure and stress. And all this blocks learning. If there are any negative feelings associated with learning, it completely blocks learning. New research shows that a child's attitude is more important and even a better indicator to their level of success in school than their intellect. And I think as teachers, we know that. We've always known that, I suppose. We're always looking for ways to enhance learning by improving their mood, changing their attitude, trying to just increase their emotional well-being. So when kids are happy, emotionally balanced, and feeling good about things, that leads to increased learning, better attitude, and more success at school. So my question is, I wonder, why doesn't the district value this instructional program enough to fund it? Is it not effective? Is it not successful? Is it not necessary? So before eliminating a program that directly impacts our students in a positive way, talk to the teachers and get our input. We know the budget looks better even than the January proposal, by $400 per student. We know we also have the supplemental concentration grant funds and the populations of kids that, time's up, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
time is up with the
Thank
time.
you. Okay, thought I
So
heard that. I
Nicole,
could-
can you tell us how much time we have
Thank you.
left? So we have 9 people. Okay, 12 minutes done, so we have about 18 more minutes, and we have 9 people who want to speak. So if you want everyone to have a chance, if you could please speak for a shorter time, if you want everyone to have an opportunity. Next is Jess Arnstein.
Hi, thanks for listening to me real quick. 3 years ago I was here, I spoke. I am the Farm and Garden Director at Parducci Winery. For the last 6 years, we've helped support the gardens through bringing a few hundred students in the spring and a few hundred students in the fall through our farm at Parducci, and then also holding various events that have raised between $3,000 and $6,000 for the gardens, for supplies and seeds and that type of thing. After the meeting from 3 years ago, I sent an email. I think Trustee Fernandez, Trustee Nelson, and Trustee Van Sant responded to my ideas. I was told I would be able to help implement the ideas or help keep the program going. So I was very willing to volunteer more of my time to help make sure it stayed in place. So you can imagine that when I didn't hear anything, I assumed, great, we're going to keep it. Sounds like it all worked out. So I was very disappointed to hear that it's considered being cut now. I do want to say that I'm still would offer my support on various levels to help if it's a metrics thing, if it's a matter of demonstrating why it works, why it's beneficial, why it is reducing anxiety, why it is actually improving test scores. I'd be happy to help with those inner workings of the program. And I urge you to actually look, when you look at the list of things to cut, it looks, okay, 138 grand versus a few other programs that are less. That seems like a big chunk to take, but when you probably compare to certain other items, definitely tech-related items probably are a multitude of times more than that amount. And maybe look at some bigger fish to cut than something that is so widespread, so useful, and will continue to last for the students. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Erin Arnstein.
All right, I'm going to try to make this short. So I'm Erin Arnstein, Jess Arnstein's wife, and I'm also a farmer and gardener at Parducci. More specifically, I'm a scientist, a technology expert, a mathematician, an engineer, a writer, a designer, an artist, a teacher, so many more titles that accompany the dynamic and innovative life I lead as a farmer and gardener. Every day at my job, I'm challenged and inspired by so many different perspectives that help me become a successful contributing citizen in an increasingly interdependent world. I'm also a researcher, and in my research, I was led to the mission and vision statements of Ukiah Unified School District. The mission statement reads, "We will challenge and inspire our students to value different perspectives and become successful contributing citizens in an increasingly interdependent world." The vision statement reads, I'm not going to read the whole thing since I've been limited. It reads, "We are a dynamic and innovative learning community, and our decisions are focused on the interests of students. We are dedicated to the joy of learning and teaching, high expectations and academic rigor, recruiting and developing talented and innovative teachers, leaders, and support staff, engaging parents and community members." If this school district is striving to be an innovative and dynamic learning community, why is it considering cutting a program that allows just that? Innovation is not just always about being new. It's about realizing that something works well and applying better solutions to new requirements through more effective methods and models. The School Gardens program already works well. It just needs the support from the board to be more widely implemented. At one point, the UUSD School Board of Education voted to allow the School Gardens program into their classrooms, and it is therefore their responsibility. If the UUSD Board of Education expects this program to achieve something specific and then bases the very existence of the program on whether or not this expectation is met, it is the board's duty to clearly and transparently lay out what specifically they expect to be achieved and how it can be achieved. I would argue that the UUSD School Gardens program and its mostly part-time staff have not failed the board's expectation, but that the board has failed the program and staff by not providing clear expectations in the first place. In my research, I also found a very well-written article in the January 28th Ukiah Daily Journal by board trustee Gail Monpere regarding the locally controlled accountability plan budget cuts in UUSD. In her article, she states, while stakeholders may have strong opinions or preferences for particular programs, the board must support expenditures that we believe will result in increased student achievement. To do less would be to abdicate our fiscal and governing responsibilities. I would say to do less would be to not even attempt to fight for a program that has some of the most potential for showing student achievement, and to cut a program simply because the board is not willing to take ownership of it or to lead by example to just show how innovative this school district can be. If taken seriously, the School Gardens program can bring Ukiah Unified School District to new heights and put this district on the map for showing just how important, impactful, innovative, and dynamic hands-on education can be.
Thank you. Next is Peggy Backup. Okay. Thank you. Sid Maurer.
Thanks for the chance to address you. I originally just wrote a letter, and I wasn't necessarily thinking I'd be able to come here, given I'm not feeling so great, but I thought I'd just come and read the letter. I understand that you regularly face many difficult funding choices. However, the decision to continue to fund the UUSD Garden program should be an easy one. Our Nokomis Garden Specialist is Peggy Backup. Her effort in support of our fourth grade curriculum has been remarkable. This year, Peggy began the year by supporting our solar unit by spearheading a solar cooking effort with my students. Garden coordinator Terry DeSulke then helped Peggy support us by extending this demonstration and the science behind it to serve the parents solar cooked food at back to school night. It was a huge success. We had 25 out of 26 parents attending. We have continued this unit throughout the year, and we have extended it into examining solar energy waves and tangentially sound waves, and to provide background when a solar energy expert will come visit our class. Additionally, the garden program has bolstered our science curriculum. Peggy has given great support to our math and language arts programs. Supporting math, she has mapped the garden and we have, as our class is mapped, the garden and used the garden beds to extend students' understanding of perimeter and area. We also measure and monitor rainfall. Language arts garden connections are natural in support of our reading writing focused unit centered on the secret garden. Peggy has developed a comprehensive list of plants in our garden, which are referred to in this wonderful book, which glories in the redemptive aspects of being outside and working in a garden. Curriculum aside, we should not forget the chief lesson of this excellent book. In nature, we can see and be buoyed by growth and change. Students working in the garden with Peggy grow and change restoratively right along with the plants. I urge that you not defund the district garden program. In fact, please consider how our district can help support enhancing this fantastic program, which benefits so many students in a myriad of ways throughout the district. Thank you.
Sarah Marshall.
Hello, my name is Sarah Marshall. I'm the coordinator for the Gardens Project of North Coast Opportunities. I think a lot of the teachers here and the other community members have done a great job of summing up the benefits to students for school gardens, but I'd like to share some benefits to the community as well. First, I think you'd be interested to find out that there's a countrywide study proved that twice as many teachers report being satisfied with their job in schools that have gardens opposed to schools that do not have gardens. Second, 80% of community gardeners grew up with a garden or participated in a school garden when they were children, showing that school gardens do impact the children for their entire lives, and they stick with gardening and make healthier choices throughout their entire lives because of the school gardens that they were part of. And third, I'd like to say that gardens reduce crime rates as well as create an overall feeling of safety for the entire community. And I think I'd like to let the teachers just speak for the benefits to the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so 10 minutes left. Dan Blanton?
Hello. My name is Dan Blanton. I'm a garden specialist at Eagle Peak and Calpella. I work with kindergarten through 5th grade. I started, last year was my first full year, and I started as a substitute teacher with 5th grade at Eagle Peak. When I got there, the garden was kind of a mess. It really wasn't alive anymore. The first, while I was a substitute, I got MRC, Mendocino Railroad Company, to donate wood. So for the last year and a half, I've had my 5th graders rebuilding garden beds, and that is STEM, right? I mean, they're actually out there engineering. They're learning how to square something, how to measure, how to build, how to level. So these kids are really getting a hands-on experience. At Calpella, I started there last year for the entire year, and that garden's been amazing. I have a ton of teacher support there. The students really, they love the garden. You know, I feel like I don't know, I kind of feel famous when I show up to work sometimes because they're like, hey, Mr. Dan, you know. And it's because I think they enjoy their time out there. They get to talk to each other. They really have fun. We have cooperative working, and there's a lot of conversation. We journal, we draw. The other day, my lesson wasn't really a lesson. The 2nd graders had grown some beans, they planted them, so I was like, we're gonna work on our measuring today. So go in the garden, take your journal, measure your beans. We had yardsticks, so they drew their beans, they drew scale, they put the measurements in inches, they wrote a little bit about it. So they're working on all their aspects of what they're learning in the classroom, and they're really bringing it outside into the garden. And my 5th graders feel fairly passionately about their garden. They got pretty upset when they heard that it might be lost. And it's because they built it. They built it themselves. I had a lot of students who really loved eating fresh lemon cucumbers last year. They'd never seen a lemon cucumber. Didn't know what it was. But now that's all they really want, and they're upset because it's winter and they're not growing. But I assured them that soon, because we're rebuilding our greenhouse, that we will be planting lemon cucumbers. So I'll keep it short. But really tonight, I'm not up here for me. I'm up here for my students, for my kids. They need that garden. They want it. I'm working on getting my degree. These children have inspired me to continue my education. I'm going to get my credential and probably be a co-worker at some point. So,
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Brown?
Good evening, board. Good evening, board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Brian Brown. I am the garden specialist at Homelita and Frank Zeke. One of the reasons I took this job because I thought it was worthwhile. We don't get paid a lot, and it's not easy. There's a lot of challenges, and I think I speak for my colleagues too that they do the job because it's something that they feel is important. When I started this job, we were focusing on NGSS science standards and we've been taking class to try to increase our knowledge of how to teach science. Let's see, we try to, use the garden as an academic experience. We use journals that we do that pretty much every time we come out. A lot of students use the garden. Just last Friday, I think I had close to about 70 kids just come out to the garden in one day. There was actually a class that didn't come out, so it would have been close to maybe 100. Also at Frank Zeke, we've expanded the garden to make it bigger, to make it easier to teach in the garden. There's been new fencing put in. There's 2 nice new benches that we use, so I think it would be a loss, to not use that. I like to speak for the other garden specialists I work with. They're very diligent. When we meet together, I really get the feeling that they're trying to do what the board has requested of them to try to get the program, going in the right direction. One other thing that I'm concerned about, that the board has an impression that the garden isn't living up to expectations, and I do have my job performance here. There's like 9 different topics. 5 being outstanding, 4 being, 4 being above average, and I have all 5s, 2 4s, so to my understanding, I've been doing a good job, so I don't want the garden to fall because I haven't been doing a good job and things like that. I guess that's about all I have to say tonight. I appreciate listening to me.
Thank you.
Yes.
Nicole, how much time do we have left?
We've used up 25 minutes and 35 seconds.
Okay, so we have 3 more people. If you want to just come up really briefly, we can get to all 3 of them. Otherwise, we probably won't get to the end. But Virginia Reynolds?
And who's on deck?
If we get there, it'd be Emily James and then Peggy back up.
Hi, I would like to just address a whole different aspect here. I have been a counselor in this town of youth for 42 years, and I have seen the Gardens Project just turn so many children around. I'm a grandmother, I have a special ed grandson, and the garden is what he wants to talk about. I also am the director of the interns at the Solar Living Institute, and so I'm here to tell you that the young people they want to learn about sustainability. That's what's in, they can't afford all the colleges. I'm also the owner with my husband of Down to Earth Landscaping. And so this garden actually prepares people in this community, the children, to have interest in such things. And as you all well know, that if we don't maintain a reason for our youth to stay here, they're not going to stay here. And we do not have the economic background here in this community to just have elders. And bringing up that topic very quickly, the amount of volunteerism that can happen when we have a garden. And if you've ever been in the garden, and I implore you to come see, when you have a grandparent in there helping, you're bringing all 3 segments of the community together. So please hang on to this garden project.
Thank you. Emily James. Emily?
I'll keep it bitter short. I actually was really disheartened when I watched your previous 2 board meetings, especially, no disrespect, Ms. Fernandez, but you guys did allow the independent study school program the last time, who you had already removed from the short list, to come up one after one after one. And I think this is a very important topic. The other thing I want to mention too is the fact that everyone here is in support of the garden project, which I'm very appreciative of. But my concern, I'll set that aside, is the fact that what I saw last time on the 31st was people, for instance, were advocating for programs left and right. Left and right. Take this off the short list, add this to the short list. You went from, I think, 150 items. Some things were completely laughable and appallable, that they were appalling, they were on your list. We actually paid for these things. They didn't even make the shortcut. And the whole message on the 31st was, this is an immediate, we need to get this done. We need to get this done. I think somebody wanted to get the list done right away because they didn't want this to be a lengthy process tonight. You wanted to cut that short list, get it done. For some reason, what I don't understand is I was kind of hopeful, and originally on the 18th when Ms. Van Sant said, look, we want to look at programs. We don't just want to cut programs. We want to make sure that we're not cutting here. We want to shift funds. We want to make sure that programs are being accountable. Someone said, are these programs really doing what we want them to do? And I thought, oh, this is great. You know, they can't say the garden project's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Clearly, it's not the garden project. Well, when you get down to your end of your meeting on the 31st, because the sentiment that night was, it's 2 hours, we've got 2 hours, we want to get out of here, it's 2 hours. Well, by the time you got down to your final cut short list, you were left with, I believe, 9 items. Of those items, I mean, clearly the gate line item, $10,000, they don't even use, so that was kind of not necessarily an easy one to remove because they already have a budget. The biggest cut you're going to take is these 3 coordinator positions for $130,000. You had one position for a director who did take the lead because Butte County dropped out. I mean, I watched this thing, I did my research. These are 3 people that clearly go above and beyond in the work that they do. You're talking $130,000, which includes their benefits plus their payroll. How much are they really making? I will only say that advocating, I heard I'm not supposed to advocate. Go ahead, advocate. Nobody once said anything about the Gardens project, and I thought that was just the most disgusting thing I saw because every one of you, with the exception of one, which I won't point out, everyone had interest for the short list. Take it off, add to the short list, remove, take. People even asked people to come up because they wanted their insight. Not once did anyone say anything about the garden project, and I just thought that was just such distasteful. It's just wrong. How could you not see that? That's wrong. None of you said anything when it came. No one cared about the project.
Okay, thank you. We have one more. Peggy, back up. And that will be all of our speakers who turned in a paper. We are out of time, but you can go ahead and speak if you'd like.
Hi, I'm Peggy Backup. I teach at Nokomis and Grace Hudson. And I just want to say I know that a lot of people are concerned about young people and old people drinking sodas and other really sweetened beverages. I, on the other hand, have students begging me to bring my mint water. And they're really displeased with me if I didn't happen to know that it was going to be a hot day in the garden and I didn't remember to bring the mint water. And they know it's free, it's healthy, and they drink it, and they love it. And as far as I know, they're making it at home, although, you know, I don't have complete knowledge of that, but I tell them, this is how hard it is to make it. You grow mint, put it in the water, you drink it. It's really not too hard. You don't need a fancy jug to do this in. So that's one thing that I think I just wanted to say. Everybody else here has said everything that I wanted to say. I don't need to repeat it. I do have some references if you would like more reading. I figure you don't read enough. Who do I give it to?
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you for coming and speaking, letting us know how you feel. Could I just ask that everybody who's here in support of the gardens, if you could just stand so we could just get a visual on that? Because not everyone's spoken. Okay, thank you. So here's how we were going to do this, or try to do this. So our intended outcome is to approve, modify, or reject the items that are listed on this sheet that Ian's going to magically put back up here. So our
Trustee, I'm
Yes.
just wondering if this is going to be a long discussion, if we might take a 5-minute break. No?
Could we do it after this, do you think? Can people wait?
For that.
Huh?
I guess.
What do you think? Are you fine waiting Ms. Bogart, you would like to take a break?
I think it's better to do it so that nobody's feeling antsy during the discussion.
To take a break.
To take a break? Okay, 5-minute break then. We'll be back at 8:02.
Quite the day.
If you could please have your seats. Bad timing on my part. So here, so it's noisy. So our intended outcomes are to approve, modify, or reject the items listed on this potential budget reduction shortlist that you have. This is the long sheet. So the steps we were going to do is step one, which is what we also did last time. If there's any programs or services that are not on here that are general fund expenditures that you would like to bring up for discussion, I will put them on the worksheet. I'm trying to be really flexible here, yeah. If anyone has a last minute something, hopefully they don't. Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move on to step two.
Hold on there.
It's this one-page one that looks like this.
Right, but we were looking for the full page of the other one, just to do a quick review to see if there was anything else we wanted to pull off.
For the original
But we
52?
don't have it with us.
Okay. Do you need it?
So we're working off the list of 10.
We're working off the short list that we
They
created
have it in
last
front of
time.
them?
They don't have the long one. I have it.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we do have it. We have this one.
Debbie, just to clarify, they have the long like the bigger paper and the smaller paper. Yes. The
This as
smaller,
well?
the 8.5 by 11 was the list you looked at
Last time.
last week.
Yeah.
It has more items on it. This is what you came up with
Well, if
after
I
looking
wasn't
at that.
successful last week, I probably won't be successful this week.
Okay,
so.
good to recognize that. Okay. So step two, of these items, of which now we only have 10, which ones would you like to circle? And circling would be either for further discussion, modification, or opposition. And opposition in this case means you oppose the reduction. So it's opposite the LCAP. So which of these do you want to look at as an individual item? And then we're going to go through all the circled items and discuss and then vote on each circled item. And the ones that are left, that are non-circled, we're going to vote on as a group, if they're not circled by anybody. So for example, if nobody had any questions about number one, or didn't want to discuss it, or had no opposition to it being cut, then you don't need to put a circle. But if you'd like to discuss an item or modify it, then please suggest it for circling. So Trustee Van Sant, you have your highlighter up?
I'm going to need a further discussion on number 1 and 9.
To start with, okay? Any other ones you can, right now that you? Oh,
Well, for me, that's good right now.
okay. Trustee Barrett?
Number 7.
Any others? Any other?
Does that mean
Yeah, Trustee.
if we're not circling them, we're leaving them to get rid of?
Yes, if you're not circling them, you're leaving them as a proposed budget reduction. So if you
But
want
there's
to,
still a vote at the end.
but you're going to vote on all, we were going to vote together on all the non-circled items.
On the non,
Trustee Van Sant?
and then discuss the other.
I'd just like to clarify number 3.
Okay, let's go ahead and circle that one. And if there's any you want to circle as well, let us know. Want to circle 4?
We can circle 4, just I want to give the board some information about number 4.
Okay, Trustee Montpere?
I have a clarifying question on the issue of the modular number 9. That's not really a reduction.
That one's circled, so we'll talk about that one
Okay.
and have some information. Do you need to talk about 10? That's,
Yes, can I just say that?
yeah.
Item 10, just to clarify, if you want to circle it, we can, but I'll just clarify. That item at first interim, because that position has been unfilled for so long, it was removed from the budget. So that's why there's no savings listed. It has already been removed from the budget.
Trustee Montpere, do you have anything else?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I do.
Mine have been.
Trustee Arkin?
number 5.
Okay, so the only ones that are non-circled right now are 2 and 6 and 8. So that would mean that you all feel comfortable with those cuts without discussion? Trustee Arkin, do you have your pen up down there? No, there's no motion. We're going to take each one. We're going to wait on this. Okay, so now we're going to start with number 1. Replace non-funded portion of fresh fruits and vegetable program with second chance breakfast.
Can I make a comment about that?
Sure.
Or Megan has something to say.
I was going to suggest, since there's a lot of audience members interested in number 7, perhaps we address that one.
I think number 1 has come up with some of the
It has
audience
to,
members
that's true.
also.
So I'll ask my question. I was puzzled about this because we have, sorry. I'm not clear how this elimination of this program is eliminating snack. So perhaps that could be better explained.
It's not eliminating snack. There
Is
would
it
be
changing snack?
There would be food offered during that period of time during brunch, and you know, students who qualify, it's their second chance breakfast, so if they don't eat breakfast in the morning, they would have food then, and so there's still going to be a snack offered. Right now, it's currently fruit. This would be a more substantial snack. It's kind of like the brunch at the middle school and the high school, and if our plans go well, because our percentage of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch is so high, we're looking into being able to offer free for all students instead of having to submit an application. If that's the case, any student would be able to get this. If you didn't qualify for free or reduced price meal, you would be able to purchase the snack that's being provided.
And is it offered at the same time that snack is currently offered, that fruit is currently offered?
Yes.
Okay. Okay,
So we're
then-
not eliminating the ability for a student to get food during that time period.
Are we eliminating anything?
We are eliminating,
A certain kind of food?
no, right now, as Jim explained at the last meeting, we currently receive a grant of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetables grant for Nokomis and Oak Manor, so that is all grant funded, but the district has chosen for a very long time to also give that to all of the other schools. And so it actually costs about $80,000. The $28,000 is just the amount that the general fund contributes to food service. So if we were able to offer the second chance breakfast, we're piloting that currently at Ukiah, the second chance breakfast. If we're able to offer that, then there would be food there for kids still.
So I want to be really clear because we have gotten comments that we're eliminating snacks. So my understanding from this proposal is that we are saving money, implementing a new program that would replace only fruit at some schools with a more substantial breakfast food.
That's
That
correct.
will include fruit, because fruit is always mandatory in breakfast.
That is correct.
Okay, so we're actually expanding snack.
That is correct.
Okay,
It just
thank you.
wouldn't, if we don't, if we're unable to implement the free for everyone next year, students who didn't qualify for free and reduced lunch would purchase their snack. Currently, they're given fruit,
Okay.
all students.
Trustee Bogard?
So the key difference is that we're going to be able to bill the federal government for the second chance breakfast, whereas right now, we cannot bill them for the fruit snack.
That is correct.
Just wanted to make that clear for people who were emailing
That is
for the
correct.
last week.
Trustee Montpere?
When you say they miss breakfast, breakfast is offered at every school to every child, is it not?
Breakfast is offered to any student who would like breakfast, yes, before school.
Before school? So
Yes.
why would kids miss that breakfast?
Well, they might not
get their
arrive on time to get it. They might eat breakfast at home. A variety of reasons, but, you know, brunch is there if students are hungry mid-morning.
But I just want to clarify, there was some discussion at one point. I just want to be sure that no child is not able to eat breakfast because their bus is arriving late for some reason.
I don't know the answer to that. I believe the students are offered breakfast, even if their bus is arriving later, yes.
Okay.
Trustee Mulgard?
Is there a difference between second chance breakfast and brunch?
No.
Thank you. Can we
Sorry,
just
I call
all
it brunch.
agree to use one word then?
Is there a motion to replace the non-funded portion of Fresh Fruits and Vegetable Program with Second Chance Breakfast?
Yes, I so move to charge the federal government for our healthy food, because we can.
Trustee Van Sant, you have a comment?
I would like a second on my motion first.
I'd like to second the motion, and I think it would be interesting at the end of the year, if it turns out Second Chance is not working for whatever reason, if we can revisit this. But let's give it some time.
The amendment to my motion is accepted. Because I'd like it, no, and the reason I say that is because I want it in the record that we are going to revisit this if this doesn't work.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we will skip down to number,
Can I ask one question?
yes.
Why are we only saving 28 when we're not, why are we not including the 51,000 cafeteria savings?
It's not general fund. The cafeteria fund is not general fund. So the savings that we're trying to realize is in the general fund. And so that's the portion that the general fund contributes to the cafeteria fund to pay for the program. But we will be saving the $51,000 also in the cafeteria fund that can be used for another purpose, equipment upgrading, whatever the
Which could then
department
reduce the
needs.
general fund in some way.
Potentially.
So we are going to skip down to number 7 per trustee Van Sant's request to eliminate, reduce the garden program. Trustee Barrett?
I think we've heard tonight that the sites, some sites are deeply concerned about this program. And so I feel that the sites are in the best position to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. And so I would like to make a motion that we do not reduce the $138,000 for the garden specialists, but that we give those funds to the 8 sites which currently have garden specialists, and each site can decide how to use these funds within their school site plan for student achievement.
I second it.
You second that? Okay, discussion?
So,
Go ahead,
oh,
Adam.
I'm sorry, I don't have a pen.
It's right in front of you. Trustee.
No, you go for it.
Trustee Nelson.
I apologize for barging in. So the idea is that money is, we're not removing any money from the table, but we're giving each individual site the portion that would pay for the half FTE, and they could decide how to use it. If the garden is important to them, great. If it's not important to them, then they can do something else.
Right.
Okay.
Trustee Arkin?
I just wanted to say that I went to Calpella today and I did meet Garden Dan. And it was really a very enjoyable experience for me. And I appreciated the hard work he did with all the kids that were 4th graders. And that was really fun. And they do have a very exciting program there. That's all.
Trustee Van Sant?
I appreciate Trustee Barrett's motion, and you seconded it already,
Yes.
right? So I just want to clarify for the benefit of the audience and ourselves again. So your proposal is that we do not remove any funding, we return it to the sites to decide if they'd like to retain the garden program or use those funds in another way that supports student learning. Is that the suggestion?
Yes.
Okay.
That's mine.
I appreciate that proposal. I feel like as a board member, it's been very difficult for me to evaluate the effectiveness of this program, and I agree with you. I don't feel like I'm in a good position to know whether it's accomplishing the goals of increasing science literacy, increasing literacy in all of the ways that are the goals we have for our students that are of great importance to me. We're going to talk a little bit later about the outcomes that we're seeing right now and some of the metrics, and I have concern about some of the metrics that we're seeing in terms of literacy and math and positive social climate. So I think if the school sites feel like this garden is moving in that direction and supporting those kinds of outcomes that we all want to see, that's great. And I also want to respond to, just for the teachers in the room, we also hear from you that you're being asked to do a lot of different things, and that there's a lot of different, you're asked to be doing the gardens and the arts and and that eats into the classroom time that you feel is really important. So I want to propose that this is also a response to that. We're hearing a need for more flexibility from our sites and the program, so I'm happy to return this funding to the sites to decide whether or not this is going to meet their needs. And it sounds like, from the interest in the room, that many of the sites are going to choose to retain the program, which is great.
Trustee Montpere?
I too support the suggestion. I think it's a wonderful suggestion. And I've been impressed with the people who came tonight. I will be honest, when we first started the garden program, I wasn't so crazy about it, and I didn't think it was well organized always. I do feel that once we laid out more specific guidelines, that the garden staff really did work to implement them. I would hope that we would continue to have those high expectations and be sure that it is tied to the science standards and other things. But we try so hard and want parents and community people to become involved in our schools. And I just remember year after year after year, donation after donation to the garden program. And I personally feel that to just dismantle it would be an insult to that effort. And for that reason, I support it.
Trustee Molgard?
I don't think this needs to be part of the motion, but I would like to hear a report back in a year or whatever from those schools that do continue with it to see how the progress has been.
Noted. Is there any more discussion, questions? So then, this is going to be,
I think it's a no. Let's be really clear for the audience. We're not reducing the funding, but it's a change in structure, or however you want to word it.
Vote on this.
so can I just put schools?
Carolyn made a motion. Did you make a motion?
Yes,
Carolyn?
I
Yes,
did
and
make
it was
a motion.
seconded. Okay.
So all in favor?
Aye.
So I'm just going to write school sites here.
I apologize. I know this is probably out of order, but I just want you to realize that not all of the gardens at each site use the garden specialist the same amount of time. For example, Calpella has every teacher participating, so Garden Dan spends 3 days there, whereas he spends 2 days at Eagle Peak. So I just want you to be aware that they're not equal. Not all of them are equal.
I was aware of that, and I figured that our fiscal department could work with the sites to figure that out.
Okay. Okay, next we're going to jump back up to number 3, reduced paraprofessional support in special ed. Trustee Van Sant?
I again wanted to clarify for the benefit of the audience and the listening public that this reduction is because we don't have a need for it. We are not reducing paraprofessional. If you could better explain that, but I just think it's really clear that we're not, this is in response to the need, not about money.
That is correct. And when we look at staffing needs, truthfully, it probably shouldn't have been on this list because we regularly look at staffing needs and ratios. And this position has been unfilled and it's not needed.
Okay.
Okay, so is there a motion to reduce paraprofessional support in special ed?
I so move.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 4, eliminate the .75 FTE equivalent for DSC Secretary 3 that supports the DSC Director.
I just want to clarify for the board in looking at this position more, it actually is funded .75, supporting the District Service Center, and .25 to Ukiah Independent Study Academy. That's not how it's implemented, though. It's half-time at the District Service Center and half-time at Ukiah Independent Study Academy. So although the funding is broken out in that way, that is how it's practiced. And although, you know, we're not totally thrilled with Katie's looking at me, that certainly we need to look at reductions across the district, and our Ed Services team has looked at this and will implement it. The question for me is, it's currently funded at .75 at the District Service Center, but in reality, half of the Secretary 3's time is at UISA. So if it's eliminated at .75, it would mean that the UISA would have .25 of a position, not .5 like it currently has.
Trustee Mulgard?
I am only as good as my assistants are. I am a very bad administrator when I do not have help. I mean, seriously, I cannot do my job. So I guess I'm wondering, with the DSC that this secretary is currently supporting half-time, how many professional curriculum people is that person supporting?
I think we'll have Katie address that.
Okay.
Good evening. So the secretary supports the Director of Alternative Education. That's the only director that she supports, or that position supports. And then, so she's at the district office half-time, and then she is at UISA half-time in the morning. And so
How does the Director of Alternative Ed, what's the plan to getting the work done? Because I'm sure the person is not just eating donuts.
No. So we've discussed how we would do that. We would have to disperse some of the most important duties that secretarial support staff does to, most of them make sense to go to the secretary that supports curriculum. And then we would just be very clear on what that is, not to overload that person. And then the Director of Alternative Ed would have to do some of the work.
How many people does the current secretary to curriculum support?
One, the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment.
But you currently have someone else who works with you as well, Chris Francis, right? Not Chris Francis, Chris Miller.
He's the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, and he has a secretary's support.
Full-time?
Correct.
Yes. Thank you.
Trustee Montpere?
I guess I just want to express a slight dissatisfaction. I mean, if that position was supposed to be .75, I'm uncomfortable with it being moved over to another site. I just think we have to be careful of that. Everybody would like more people to have. I would have liked 3 aides in my classroom, but I didn't get them. So I think it's important that we have a little firewall up, because the more, you can always find more things for someone to do, that's all.
Trustee Nelson?
So I understand that the 75% is being paid by the district service center, but they're only getting half the time. In this proposal, we're talking about getting rid of 3/4 of it. So is that correct? So
That's the way it was originally written, yes.
I guess my question is twofold. We're talking with UISA about reducing their budget, changing the program, and if we take away this points, I'm confused on how this would work. So what would it look like if we were to
I would
amend
like
this?
to recommend that we eliminate the .5 for now until I've had time to work with the UISA staff on the rest of it. And because it would be a reduction, we'd need to work with the union on that as well, with CSEA.
Do you have a motion?
I have a motion. Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'd like to amend number 4 to read eliminate .5 FTE DSC secretary, 3 that supports DSC director.
I'll second that motion.
Could you repeat the motion?
It's
You're
Eliminating
in short,
a
it's just
.5.
reducing it from .75 to .5 until the superintendent's had a chance to talk with UISA and the changes that's going on in that program.
This is it's .5 for the district service center. The other .5 is actually UISA.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Does that make things more complicated or less complicated for you, Deb? I mean, it might be one person, so I'm not quite sure how it's a single person. So I just don't know whether this is helpful or not.
But we're doing FTEs, right? So we don't.
It is it is 1.0 FTE of a person.
Okay.
That serves 2 locations.
Okay.
And when you do a reduction in time, it's negotiated with the union. If you eliminate a position, you just have to negotiate the effects of the layoff. So it is more straightforward to eliminate the whole position than to reduce it. However, I'd like to look at the overall picture of UISA and look at, before we decide to do that.
Okay, so then Trustee Nelson's motion will work for your planning purposes,
We will need to work with the union on it
which was going to have to happen anyway, right?
in 2 different ways. If we eliminate the whole position, we just negotiate the effects of the
Okay.
layoff. When you reduce a position, you actually negotiate the reduction.
Okay, I can't.
Sorry.
Can't really tell what's better, but go, that's okay.
The superintendent
it.
suggested the .5, so it seems like she's okay with it.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving to item 5, eliminate the GATE TOSA position and fund a TOSA position to support GATE, MESA, and Science Fair.
I would like to eliminate science fair off that list, and I would like to eventually talk about the garden TOSA position, possibly, because it's so science-focused, possibly thinking about that position. But the GATE used to be served through, actually, it was an administrator position that did MESA and GATE, and we eliminated the administrator position and made it a teacher on special assignment position, and we separated the 2. But it used to, a position used to serve both programs. And so I think we've done a lot of work over the last several years with GATE. I don't want to lose sight, if we do this, I don't want to lose sight of the elementary portion, because I felt like when we created this GATE TOSA, that was kind of the area that was lacking a little bit. There was a lot of attention paid in the high school. So, but I think it's doable at this point, because we have done so much structural work to get the program organized that I think we could do it.
Trustee Van Zandt?
I just wanted to speak in agreement to that. I do know that when we originally set up the GATE TOSA position, there was a great deal of work to do in setting up a testing structure at the elementary school that was kind of streamlined and fair and worked out. So it feels like since we've done those years of work, it makes sense to be able to reduce it now, since there was a lot of startup to getting that system in place.
Trustee Arkin?
In being at a meeting yesterday, the high school was talking about being concerned about the effects of doing something like this with the MESA program. So Deb, part of what you're saying is, and what we had set up was to get the GATE program going, but somehow they felt that MESA was losing out because the emphasis was being taken away from part
school, no?
No, it'll be the same. They will get the same level of service. We currently have a half-time teacher who is supporting Mesa.
Right.
So it will be the same. And it will be the same as it used to be, which was about a half-time
Right.
person. It used to be an administrator, but a half-time person dedicated to Mesa.
Trustee Nelson?
And B, my other comment is we had tremendous outpouring from the community and staff about the garden program. I don't see somebody here worried about Mesa. Not that it's not important, but when we're talking about budget stuff, it's really, would have been nice to have heard from them.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I'm
just
being a
bringing-
little abrasive. I'm sorry, but. So I'd like to make a motion that we eliminate the Gate TOSA position and fund a TOSA position to support Gate and Mesa.
Second that?
Okay, are there any more comments, Trustee Mulgard?
I don't understand the answer to the Mesa question. It says eliminate a .5, but you're saying that it's not eliminating any time and they'll have the same amount of time.
No.
This position, the GATE position, is currently fully funded out of supplemental concentration grant funding. The Mesa position is funded out of the general fund. So we would, the whole position would be still funded out of supplemental concentration grant funding. But we're not eliminating that half-time position.
It's just being combined.
You're eliminating a half-time Gate position. is what you're
Yes.
doing.
I guess I'm not sure why the word Mesa's here then.
Because they're shifting half of that funding back to general fund, it sounds like.
No, we're fully funding the position out of supplemental concentration grant funding to support GATE and Mesa. And I feel confident in this proposal. We used to do it this way.
Yeah.
And I just need to ensure that the person who's in this position will continue to support elementary GATE.
Trustee Montpere?
So we're not really cutting 36,000, we're just shifting it somewhere else. Is that what I
We are,
understand?
overall, we have 1.5 FTE dedicated to GATE and Mesa.
Okay.
We are going down to 1 FTE dedicated to GATE and Mesa.
Oh. I would just be curious, not necessarily, but to know how many GATE students we're supporting and how many Mesa students we're supporting. That's not for tonight.
I don't have that answer tonight.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're going to jump to the back to number 9, which was added by leadership, purchase modulars instead of renting.
Penny, would you like to address that?
Yes, I would. We received some new quotes for purchasing the 6 modulars, 2 at Grace Hudson, 4 at Calpella, and the price comes in at just a little over $223,000. So we would recommend that we use some of the recently approved 17-18 deferred maintenance one-time money to make this purchase, and then we would be saving ongoing a little over $34,000 a year starting next year. After 6.5 years, we would recoup the purchase price, and then it would be a true savings ongoing.
But Penny, to clarify, we would be using one-time money. So
Right.
starting next year, we would be saving.
Yes, starting next year, we would be saving a little over $34,000 a year.
And Penny, are you recommending this?
Yes.
Trustee,
Loosening up the purse string, that's.
Trustee Nelson?
Penny, that one-time money, was it earmarked for something else? I like the math, it makes sense, but I'm just wondering, what are we sacrificing?
We recently approved the one-time money for 17-18 that included textbooks and additional deferred maintenance money. And the deferred maintenance piece was about $506,000. So we thought it a good use of the money to eliminate the ongoing lease and make the purchase now of the portables.
Okay, so we've got, the deferred maintenance list we have goes on for pages and pages.
Right.
we're just not gonna we're gonna defer it longer?
Yes.
Okay.
Trustee
Thanks.
Montpere?
On the portables at Grace Hudson, it was my recollection that we added that second one when there was a specific year with a bubble.
Yeah.
And so if that bubble is gone, why do we need to keep that extra portable?
I know that they're being used. I know the counselor uses one of them, and he does a lot of groups in that particular classroom. I can't remember how the other one is being used. We intentionally, that Grace Hudson was getting so large beyond 500, that we intentionally started limiting kindergarten enrollment so that we could not, because once all those kids go through, it becomes extremely large. We did the same thing at Ukiah this year because they were growing so large. So I wouldn't suggest that we turn it back in.
I wasn't thinking of turning it back in, actually. I was thinking of turning it into preschool. I know it's probably being used. We all know that the minute a classroom opens up, teachers are like octopus. They take it over. And did that happen after, what's her name, did her study of how much extra space every school had?
No, that was included.
That was included?
Yep.
Okay. I just thought you talked about preschool, and if there's
Trustee
an empty
Mulgard?
building.
$223,000 doesn't sound like enough money for 6 portables. Are those used?
The ones that exist right
Yeah, we currently own them, or we currently have them at the sites.
So you're just paying them off?
Yes.
Yes.
I thought we were getting new ones.
No. Trustee Van Sant? That'd be a real
Makes
deal.
so much more sense now. The numbers actually make sense to me now.
Several of
Thank
them
you.
are. They're pretty new, some of them.
Trustee Van Sant?
I'm okay with the motion. I'm a little uncomfortable because I feel like we set up priorities for deferred maintenance. We say these are the things that are really important to us, and then we're like, oh, let's just skip that and do something else. So I just am questioning our own commitment to a process. So I'm okay with it, but it does feel a little uncomfortable to me. We probably had priority uses for those funds. I would like to think we did, and now we're.
We do have millions of dollars of need, but if you'll recall, the one-time money was just recently, it was for this year. It was in this year's budget. And so we approved it for additional deferred maintenance needs, but in looking at ongoing reductions, it would make sense to make this purchase using those funds that we didn't know we would have earlier.
And Megan, I'll just add, we're going to get, we think, the governor's proposal is showing that we will get more one-time money next year that you could spend on deferred maintenance.
Could you remind us when we come back to this, that we stole $223,000 from Gabe?
Yes.
Okay,
Gabe will remind you, too.
okay.
I mean, I don't want to belabor the point. I know I want to stick to your schedule.
Well, we're not on it, but go ahead.
But, I mean, is this really the highest, best use of these funds? I mean, we have, like.
I think it's the savings that we're going to realize. That's why she's going to go for it.
Yeah.
Would someone like to
Are
make
you
a
afraid
motion?
that the length of time that the portables are going to be in use are not going to allow us to recover the cost?
I mean, I'm gonna go for it, but I feel like in times when we have one-time money, it's a time to do like improvements and buy like new furniture, things that are, I guess it's maintenance though, right? It's deferred maintenance. Paint things, I don't know. I'm okay with it, I'm gonna leave it alone.
We're doing
You're not
that.
talking like a homeowner.
No.
Trustee Nelson?
Megan, I totally appreciate where you're coming from.
You do?
Well, that's why I asked the question, but I see Gabe nodding, kind of like a maniac back there, that it's a good idea.
Okay, all right, let's go.
And he has to piece the.
Another way to look at it might be in 10 years, we'd be spending $340,000 and still owe another $34,000 each year thereafter.
Well, isn't it the same as homeowning versus renting? Not that I'm recommending homeowning to everyone, because I think in part it's a little bit of a slick thing that the federal government does, but isn't it the same idea that you pay and then you don't have to pay when you have less income because you're old?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
On that note, I'd like to make a motion that we do number 9 added by leadership, that we purchase modulars instead of renting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I need to make a motion?
Okay, so now we have number 2, the gate materials and supplies. Number 6, reducing extra hire by 25%. And number 8, the examining the PE para plus PE teacher. Is there a motion to approve those reductions?
I move that we, you want to approve them all together?
Yes.
I move that we approve the aforementioned reductions.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, we're not done?
Ian, would it be easy to remove this? It's right. Okay, moving on to these first readings. We have
60,000.
We have about 11 first readings here. Are there any questions? We're just, sorry. Oh, I can see again. Are there any questions about these first readings? Or Deb, do you have any comments about these first readings?
I was just going to tell our very polite educator audience members that they can leave if they'd like, but you're welcome to stay for the
Welcome to
whole
stay.
awesome meeting.
Where are you going?
Right back at you.
Is there any feedback on any of these items, these first readings? Remember, these are first readings, and they come back at the next meeting for the final reading.
I'll move acceptance.
No.
I won't do anything.
Any feedback?
Okay, so moving on, we're almost getting back on my schedule, but not quite, to the presentation and ratification of the MOU with the Greater Ukiah Chamber of Commerce for the Construction Corps training program.
And we apologize that Holly's not here. She is out with the flu, so.
Katie. Good evening. One, we want to thank Holly Rogers and Eric Crawford for all their work on this project. And Holly could not be here tonight. So I'm going to introduce Eric, who has spearheaded this project. And on the agenda item was the MOU between the Chamber of Commerce and Ukiah Unified. And there's a little piece on that in this presentation as well, and you can ask questions about that as well during the presentation.
And we are super excited about this and really grateful, Eric.
Thank you. Well, thank you for letting me come here tonight and speak to you about this new exciting program. Likewise, I'm really excited about it, and there are a whole bunch of students who are excited about the opportunities that are going to be made available to them because we're hopefully starting this program if you guys approve it tonight. So, the program is called the Mendocino County Construction Corps, and it is based on a program that was started last year in Sonoma County by the North Coast Builders Exchange. So the whole premise of it is that it'd be a 4-month program. We would meet one evening a week and one weekend a month. And so during the week time, well, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So it's 4-month training, and it's a collaborative effort between Ukiah Unified School District, the Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Ukiah Chamber of Commerce, and Mendocino College. And I'm going to show you part of this clip. If you want to see the whole video, I've developed a website, and you'll see the address at the very end. This video is uploaded on that site so that you can see it there if you like. If you want to see the whole thing. It's about 4 minutes long, but we're only going to watch 50 seconds of it. It just gives you the introduction. Oh, sorry.
Construction course program for seniors to learn different construction trades. You got different trades, people come in, electrical, plumbing, heavy equipment, what they experience, what every day is like, and what they did to get to that position. And we did one day, we got our forklift certification, scissor lift, and chainsaw. We around heavy equipment, excavators, dozers.
It's just really cool to hear all the
straight to an apprenticeship? Right now, we're on our boot camp, our 2-day.
So that gives you just the smallest possible vision of what they did last year in Sonoma County and how the students felt about it. If you go to the end of it, they tell really about how the week affected them, or the 2 weeks actually, affected them and their insights. So again, that's on the website if you'd like to see it. So how did we come about? Well, as I said, I did a little bit of research because I was trying to find programs to certify our students at Ukiah High School. And I was thinking about the fact that I've heard from many contractors that they're having a really hard time finding qualified people to go to work for them. Also, we lost a lot of homes, as everybody knows, in our area through this fire season. And not all of our students go to college. That's a reality. So we need to give them the skills to be able to support themselves and their families with a living wage. So a group of us got together after a meeting that was put on by Mendocino College by Judy Harwood. It was called the Curriculum to Career Summit. And afterwards we said, hey, this great thing's going on in Sonoma County, let's make it happen here. Oh my gosh. It wasn't set up like that before, but we can, that's okay. So the 2-hour trainings, we're going to meet on Monday evenings from 6 to 8. And the topics that we're going to cover are listed here on the screen. They're pretty much the basic skills that students will need to know if they're going into the construction field. Now, we have to realize this is only a 2-hour session on each skill. So they're going to come in, we'll have a contractor come in, so let's say we're covering electricity that night. So we'll have an electrician in the room. He's going to talk to the students, he or she will talk to the students for half an hour. Then we'll have an hour and a half of hands-on, this is how you wire a switch. This is how you turn a light on. So they'll go through the processes of making that happen. So they're not going to be experts in the fields, but they're going to have a rudimentary knowledge of it, understanding. The Saturday sessions, we'll have 4 Saturday sessions. One's going to be first aid and CPR. That's going to take all day. That'll be an 8-hour session. The others we're planning more on 4 hours per day. So they'll do use of power tools, forklift training, so they'll get a certification for that, and framing. The framing day will be done the week before, the Saturday before the Monday when we have the classroom session. So they're going to have hands-on, and then we'll go back and say, oh, remember when we did this? This is why. After we've done the 4-month training, the students are going to have the opportunity to go through a 2-week boot camp. And that's what you saw on the video, is at the end of the boot camp, the kids were talking about their experience. So through the 2-week boot camp, the kids are going to work 40 hours a week for 2 weeks at an active building site. We have 2 organizations that are willing to take the kids on, the RCHDC and Hope City. So RCHDC builds affordable housing in our area, and so we'll be at a work site for them for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of the 2 weeks. And then Monday and Tuesday, we'll be out with Hope City. Hope City is an organization that goes around to communities that have natural disasters, and they help people rebuild their homes very inexpensively. They can put I think it's a 3-bedroom house together with appliances for under $70,000. And so they go all over the U.S. doing this for communities. So we're going to be part of that, hopefully. Then at the end of that, the students will get a $750 stipend for completing the training. And also, we've had a business now offer to sponsor tool belts with tools in them for each completer. So they're getting $750, they're getting experience, and they're getting some tools so they can put their experience to work. Pretty good deal. So what are the parties that are involved? The responsibilities are the Greater Ukiah Chamber of Commerce has agreed to be the fiscal agent. So all of the donations that we get, which are going to fund this, will go to the Chamber of Commerce. They'll collect the money. They'll also write the checks. So UUSD is out of the picture fiscally. That was by design. So, and they graciously offered. Mendocino College is going to offer the liability insurance because the participants are all going to be students of the college. through their work experience program, so they're automatically covered by the college for the liability. And we just got word of that a week and a half ago that that's going to happen, so we're really excited about that. And not only that, the students also get 2 units of college credit for going, because they get for every 60 hours that they put in, they get 1 unit. And so they'll get 2 units from the entire program. And so UUSD is really offering the classroom and my services. So I've been doing all the organization of the meetings. We did the interviewing of the students. We had a meeting with the parents this last Monday. And I've been doing a lot of negotiations with different groups, and it's all come together. So that's the only part that UUSD has to do, and is allow me to keep going, and I use spare time too. And so interest. We have 21 students who have completed the application and interview process. They're ready to go, very enthusiastic. These kids are committed. There are some from, okay, sorry, I have to back up just a second. We have participants from Willits High School, from Sanhedrin High School, from Upper Lake High School, A+ here in town, and Ukiah Unified School District. And did I say Anderson Valley already? Anderson Valley as well. There are some students in Anderson Valley who are so committed to this program that they changed their senior project to be participating in the program instead of whatever else they had planned on. So we have, I think, 4 or 5 students from Anderson Valley who changed their project. What else do I need to tell you? So we have $12,500 already budgeted, already pledged from community groups towards this effort. The amount of money that we're looking for, a bare bones budget that we put together was approximately $34,000. And to do it really well, it's $46,000. I just got word this morning that the college is also going to put some money in. They're still negotiating on how much it's going to be, but I think it's going to help us significantly. And I have a whole steering committee, who you'll see in who are representatives from these organizations, and they're out talking to people, and they've been doing so for the last 2 or 3 weeks, asking different people and organizations for pledges. We haven't collected a cent yet because we need your approval to do so. But if we receive that, my guys are ready to go out and start shaking people down for all their spare change, and we're going to make this thing happen. And there's the site. Do you have any questions?
You know, I'm really excited by this. It's such a wonderful opportunity. So thank you so much for all your work, because it's so great for the kids.
Thanks.
Trustee Mulgard?
Yeah, hi, Eric. I'm really excited about the project too, especially because I handed out the flyer at a FEMA Cal OES meeting a week ago, not realizing that it was not 100% for sure.
Well,
so I gave you all the credit. So, my question is, what if there are no projects yet by Hope City or RCHDC? Like, I know RCHDC has a program at the end of Gobi that is for severely mentally ill that's going to be opening, but I don't know when they're going to break ground. What if nothing's broken?
They're
to work
demolishing
on?
in
Well,
about
you know, we do, so all of our instructors are contractors, and so I'm sure that if we get to the point we're in June.
Maybe they can just go out on other
We're going to say,
jobs.
okay, where are you guys working? Do you want some help?
Okay. Okay, so you're figuring that out. Of the 21 people who have signed up, how many can you accept into the program?
Our original target was 25,
Uh-huh.
and we had 27 applicants, but we lost a few in the process. Some didn't show, some had other jobs, some are taking college classes already that conflict with the Monday evening time.
Sure,
So there are
sure.
different situations that came up, so now
Okay.
we have 21.
But you're at 21 and accepting more.
Well, I'm thinking, so we are starting instruction on Monday.
All right, so if you're interested, you have 2 days. How many girls?
2.
Okay, so
And
next time.
I actively recruited females.
I know, father
When I
of
was in-
girls, I understand, but
Right.
I would love to work with you next time, you know, so
would
that
love
we
to
can
help.
boost that up, because the whole livable wage starts at, you know,
I
we don't need to go into it.
completely understand.
What are you doing about keeping people drug-free? Do you just give them a lesson about why they don't want to be wasted on the job because it results in paralysis and that, you know?
That's going to be part of our safety discussion.
Okay.
And we
All
do
right.
have a whole class session that's just on safety.
Okay.
And so that'll be part of it.
All right, so if you have 3 more days to earn like $20,000,
Well, not really,
Okay.
because, well, we have 12,500 or so already pledged.
right?
That'll get us started. Our
So
first.
you're going to start even without all the money?
Yes.
You
Okay,
go.
so.
You go,
Yeah,
guy.
well, so many years ago, Dr. Phil Gary showed us
Uh-huh.
a video at the beginning of school, and it was all about the as-if principle.
Uh-huh.
So you act as if something's going to
Right
happen,
on.
and it happens. And by golly, we've made major progress so far, and this is going to happen. So we have some big businesses who are on our steering committee who have not yet told us how much money they're going to give, and
Okay.
I have.
All right.
I
Well, I
have
would just
full
say, before
confidence
you
we're going to do
dare
it.
to think about not finishing or canceling or cutting anything short, I would hope you would come back to Ukiah Unified for whatever remained, and that we could consider that. I don't think it's going to be necessary,
Right, I hope
but,
not as well.
but I wouldn't want anything to be shortchanged for a few $1,000s.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Trustee Arkin?
I just want to say this is a great program, and thank you. Yeah.
You're very welcome.
You guys have done really nicely.
Thank you.
Trustee Montpere?
Are there any plans or any possible support from Mendocino College for students who are lacking the specific reading skills they might need to be successful?
Oh, we haven't even talked about that.
I saw reading plans and construction and
Oh,
things.
oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I just think you have to know how to read well.
Sure,
So, just curious.
that's a very good point, and I can ask them about that. Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the program? The MOU, excuse me.
If you don't have a place to build stuff, I've got roofs and buildings that are falling over, so
Great.
All right.
I don't want to, I'm not sure what things I'm doing bad by suggesting that, but in the meantime, before that happens, I'd like to make a motion that we ratify the MOU with the Greater Ukiah Chamber of Commerce for Physical Agents of Mendocino County Construction Corps Training Program.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good job.
Thank you very
Looking
much.
forward to
Thank
hearing about it.
you.
Okay, next we have our E2 Mid-Year Strategic Plan Data Presentation.
And, yeah, the one on the desktop. Yeah. Good evening. Tonight, we're here to present on our mid-year strategic plan metrics update. This does not include all of our metrics in our strategic plan. And tonight, we'll focus on suspension, attendance, and reading data tonight. So just looking at our enrollment, we have approximately 52% of our students are Hispanic, 37 white. Our Native American population has slightly decreased, and that is, just so you know, that is when students select their primary race. So although many Native American students are biracial sometimes, that doesn't reflect in this data. But we have seen that decrease, which is, you can see, different than the other ones. Yes, like. And then our socioeconomically disadvantaged went up this year to 75% from 72% last year. And our homeless population, as you can see, has increased significantly from 3% last year to 5%. So, and we know some of that is due to our fires this year. I also will say the liaisons are really helping and supporting families, and I think that's another reason why our percentage is higher. When we look at our suspensions, and you have seen much of this data before, and we're seeing that we don't have any discrepancies between Hispanic and white. We still have higher rates of suspensions for Native Americans, and the other multiple has gone up a little bit. That's all the other
groups.
When Katie talks about a discrepancy, she's looking at the percent suspended compared to the percent enrolled. So we are about, 52% Latino and 50%. So there's parity there, which is good. You don't want to see a gap.
Thank you. And then we also still see higher rates for our socioeconomically disadvantaged and our special ed, but our special ed has gone down significantly. And this is looking at mid-year, same time for the last 3 years. And then when we look at our total number of suspensions, and we discussed this in our last presentation, we do see an increase in our suspensions. And the next slide shows the unduplicated. But as we talked about at our last presentation, we know that a majority of those have to do with some severe behaviors that we see increases in. And the unduplicated means that that's student count. Like we have 315 students that have been suspended at least once this year. And then right now our suspension rate is a little bit higher than it was last year. But the good news is that we have many schools that their suspension rates of students have flattened or gone down. So really what we've looked at is we know right now, if you look at 5 of our 6 elementary schools have gone down, 1 has really flattened. So we know that our PBIS supports, those kinds of classroom behaviors have really decreased. And so you can see that in our elementary and especially in one of our largest schools at Pomolita Middle School, which is a big effort at a large school. So when we look at this, we can see that Ukiah High, when we've analyzed that right now, they have twice the amount of suspensions that they did last year, and we know we have lots of issues going on right now with fighting and drugs. So we're working on that as we talked about in our last presentation. But we did want to show that, all of our efforts really are working at a majority of our schools. So again, the findings are what we just discussed, and we talked a lot about in our other January board meeting in terms of next steps. So I didn't want to talk too much, but if people have any questions, they can ask.
Is there any, it's really nice to see, it's hard to see that spike at Ukiah High School, really sad. But the elementary schools that went down, is there anything specifically that you can pinpoint, or is it just the barrage of counseling and PBIS?
I think it's all the supports, but also we really only suspend students when we need to. I mean, Mr. McCann's not here. But Jason's here too. I think,
And Katie, I'll just add, I do believe it's because of all the supports. We have counselors and we have PBIS fully implemented now for the 4th or 5th year in our elementary schools. We're really seeing that, the result. So.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I just think, we've really worked on only suspending students when we need to suspend them, and if we have to, we do that. But I think that's really what we're getting our system in place. And there can always be spikes and all that kind of stuff, but as you go along, but I think that concerted effort can be seen in the data. And, look at Calpella, that's 9 out of about 480 students. Not a lot. Any other questions on the suspension data? So then looking at our attendance, right now, so this is taking months 1 through 5, which go from August through January 18th, and looking at our average percentage of attendance. We are down slightly, but we're relatively flat. We have had a very, I was speaking with Kathy, who does our attendance. We've had a hard flu season. She was just meeting with Frank Zeke, and they have had a lot of students out due to flu. So we kind of expected, this doesn't have the 5th month, but you can see it here. Then in month 5, we've had a decline, and we know probably in month 6, which has part of this month, in it as well. We'll probably see that, but we've had a lot of people out due to the flu.
And I'll just add that we are offering Saturday school. Even if you have the flu, you can come to Saturday school, and I heard from not when you have the flu.
Thank you.
But
Thank
to
you.
make
Please
up-
don't come when you
To
have
make
the
up
flu.
your lost day, and I actually heard from somebody this week who attended Saturday school that it was a lot of fun at the elementary school. So,
Good.
and the parents asked if they could do it on Sunday as well.
That's funny. That's funny.
So we will be making up some of these days, that they will go back and fill in some of the missed days, so.
Yeah, at Frank Zeke, they did geysers, so I got to see some cool pictures of them doing geyser experiments out in the blacktop. And I will be going to Saturday school this Saturday as well with my son. And we're excited because he can get perfect attendance back. So we're really excited
interesting.
about the opportunities, not just to recoup attendance, but for students to be proud of their attendance.
So anybody, if they do come as one day of school and still go to Saturday school?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
When we look at our chronic absenteeism, this was, mid-year to mid-year. We do see Hispanic is flat, white is down a little, is up a little bit, but also our Native American. We'll look at that data a little bit more closely because we do review that data in our Title VI committee. And so we actually want to look at that a little bit closer. And then you can see male-female split. We don't have the data from last year on those subgroups. We're starting to use our Aries analytics more in that we weren't able to pull it from last year, but we will the next year. And as you can see, homeless students, that's a challenge for them to get to school, and we have some other, our special ed. But we're really working hard on our absenteeism, and we're really excited to see how Saturday school works out. And then you can see our schools, some schools have increased slightly and others have gone down, so that's kind of why we're seeing flat attendance rates as well. I just want
to, so just so I make sure I understand here. Our foster youth make up 6% of our population and 21% of our chronic absenteeism? Is that, am I correlating the numbers correctly?
No, what that means is of that group, 21% of those foster youth are chronically absent.
Meaning they've missed 10% or more of the school days so far.
And that can be a challenge for them because they have lots of things going on. I wanted to, and I don't want you to analyze the graph too much, but I do want you to know some of the work that we're doing at the leadership level of looking at our chronic absenteeism data. We've had 2 cycles of inquiry where we've analyzed our data and have come up with strategies to look at reducing our chronic absenteeism. And so again, we still see that TKK is pretty much the area that has the highest rates. So an example is Frank Zeke looked at their data and said, whoa, so they have already had their liaison meeting with parents and targeting very specific families, not targeting, but meeting with them and talking with them about the importance of absenteeism and of being at school. And so we've been going through these processes, and these reports are going out to each site weekly and giving them an update. When we looked at our chronic absenteeism again in leadership, it was right after Christmas break, and we had kind of higher rates, and everyone went, whoa. And we said, make sure those kids get their independent study work turned in. And so everyone went back and worked on getting their independent study work in. And I really want to recognize the high school in Pomalita because their rates are really in a good place right now for secondary schools. And they've been working hard on their attendance. And of course, Eagle Peak, with the fires, I think that's been a challenge this year. So I wanted to just show those to talk about what we're doing at the leadership level to be looking at absenteeism.
And I'll just say that our metric is to try and get down to 8%. Interestingly, we're not quite sure how we chose that number because the state average is a little over 10%. So it's just interesting. But our goal is to get our chronic absenteeism rate down to 8%.
And so the color, I didn't explain, the color coding, green, if you're below 8% or below, yellow is 8 to 12, and red is 12 and above, just to give a quick look at that, to look at patterns. And again, as we said before, we're starting Saturday school to recoup attendance, provide alternatives. We're continuing to work with our community liaisons. Before, Jason has talked to you about the great work that our school resource officers are doing and have really helped not only support the students, but have supported the parents getting the kids to school. And then we're going to continue our process of looking at data. So although there's a big flu season, we're hoping that all of our efforts will help with attendance and especially the Saturday school. Any questions on?
How are you managing to convince exhausted teachers to work on Saturday school?
We asked for volunteers. They're obviously getting paid to work on Saturday, but we've had enough so far.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Van Sant?
Oh,
You don't have to have a question if you didn't really have one.
no, I have a question, but I think it's probably, it seems slightly off topic, so I'll wait till the end. It's not really, but carry on.
Okay. So next we wanted to look at our reading assessment. So one of our major metrics is to have all students at third grade reading at grade level. We use both our Dibbles assessment and our STAR reading assessment to look at our data. And then we also look at the other grades in terms of their interim assessments. So the Dibbles is the dynamic indicator of basic early literacy skills. It's given three times a year. It assesses the acquisition of early literacy skills, and you can see that it's got multiple purposes, but identifying students at risk of reading difficulties, helping teachers target instruction, monitoring students, and then also looking at school systems of instructional support. So I think I've always had the acronym up there, and I never have had that spelled out, so I thought we would put that on there tonight. I always say something different than what it is. So when we look at what we're looking at here is the beginning of this year. They take the assessment when they first come to school. We give it to them in, late August, early October. Then we give it again in December, January. Most schools give it actually in December before we leave on break. There are a few sometimes that still do it in January. And you can see right now, and we saw this pattern last year, not that it's a good pattern, but we need to look a little bit deeper of why that is happening. But that we have our score, we dip down, and then we'll go back up at the end. But what you can see right now is we're flat, or we've gone down slightly. So the key to coloring is yellow is that you're either flat or you've gone down 1%, and then red is that you've gone down more than that, more than 1. And what we're looking at is students that are scoring benchmark. So the percent of students that are scoring benchmark. So we're kind of flat right now. All the sites have looked at their data. They have they've regrouped their students for RTI. Teachers have this data, so they're in the works right now on focusing on how do we support students. That's what the major use of this data is for, is both in the classroom and the regroup students.
I was just wondering, have the teachers discussed with you at all yet on why so many of the students have gone down? I mean, I was just pretty amazed by that.
We just finished the window, so we just pulled this and we just shared this with the principals. They're pulling their own data, and they look at it. We are going to be meeting with our teacher leaders next week, because we feel like we want to have discussions around how can we support reading and improve our instruction next year.
Is this the same test?
So a couple things that happen. As the year goes on, the cut points increase. So if you're looking at the fluency measure, that those go up as the year goes on. So it's not a static measure. And then also depending on the grade levels in grades K1 and 2, the tests do change throughout the year because first letter sound, I think, is in kinder, and then it's in the first grade, and then it goes away. So the tests do change as you go across, and where the student needs to score to be at benchmark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trustee Van Sant?
I appreciate that explanation, but that it's because the kids have had 3 more months of reading instruction, and you would expect them to be better, right? I mean, that's why the benchmarks go up.
Right, and they do give a % of chance that students can move up, and it depends on each grade level. But we should see it going up. We don't want to see it going down. But they give you a % chance if a student is in the strategic, the yellow, of getting to benchmark. So it's not 100% chance, but we should see this go up. We want to see it go up. So you can see we do 5th grade, though. We've got some movement forward, so that's good. I think that's a positive thing, because last year it was not that case. When we look at the cohort rate, though, we do see a lot of improvement. So what this is looking at is, here are these students. They were in over 3 or 4 years, and what they scored at their mid on DIBELS. So were they benchmark? I shouldn't say what they scored, but were they benchmark at mid-year? And so you can see that many of our cohorts, I added in, now that we have data for 4 years, we added that in. But you can see that if we take the first cohort that says kinder, first, and second, you can see that as a district, they came in at 26%, and now we have 48% of those students, a cohort scoring proficient. So we're getting there. It's just, it's a challenge. So that, and then if you look at the next group over, they started at 22% of the students being proficient or not proficient, but benchmark at mid-year, and now we're at 47. So what we notice, though, is that it seems kids come in low, pull them up, we're getting them up, and then if you can kind of see, then we flatten out as they get into 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And we can see that a little bit on the next slide. So that's a challenge to look at. That's one reason why we've done some trainings with small group instruction at 3, 4, 5, so that teachers have the idea that we continue to teach reading. And not that they're not, but that you still have kids that need a lot of help. So that's some of the things that we're doing when we look at our reading scores, bless you. This is looking at just not the same groups of kids, but at that grade level over 3 years. So we're just looking, if we look at kinder at midpoint in 15, 16 was, and so these are different kids, but the grade level. So we've had some improvement in the grade level. So this, you're kind of looking programmatically. And you can see that we have improvement in some of our grades. We were surprised to see the first go down, so we want to look at that. One thing I do want to note, you can see that Frank Zeke has had quite a bit of success on their DIBELS, and you're going to see the same thing in the interim data. So we want to find out, what are they doing at Frank Zeke? And we've talked, we did when we did our RTI and looked at reading, we did meet with them, and they were actually restructuring their RTI, and so we want to interview them a little bit more. And we've talked to some of the teachers, but I'd like to go back and meet with the principal again. because they've changed some of their structures. So I think the good thing is that we see cohorts going up, but we still have a lot of work to do because we don't want to see, flattening across the year. So some of the things that we've talked about what the findings are, some of the things that we're doing, we did K-2 foundational reading skills training for new teachers in August. We have started small group reading instruction, and we're planning on doing more follow-up trainings with that. We've had Molly Snyder from MCOE, who was a 30-year veteran teacher at grades 3, 4, 5. So she's taught those grades, doing those trainings, and we got a lot of positive feedback. Again, each site has reviewed their data, they redo their groups and for RTI, response to intervention. We think we should continue to fund reading teachers at the elementary school. We still think that is a good strategy for RTI, not for their core, but for their response to intervention. We think we should continue migrant ed. EL does after-school tutoring. We think that's been very helpful. Last year, Barbara did analysis on students increasing in academics in reading. We will be adopting a new English language arts curriculum, which I think is going to be helpful. And also, really, we're talking about being very strategic with our professional development next year. And we'll be bringing a tentative plan to leadership and the DCC. And then one thing we do see is a need that has been brought up in a couple meetings is to really articulate our K-2 foundational reading skills and make sure that everybody's very clear on what is taught in each of those grade levels. And then a thought, an input has come up to consider potentially adding a reading teacher at targeted sites, because we do see that some sites are struggling a little bit more than others.
Any questions? Trustee Montpere?
So I know it's different because it's a DLIP program, but what do you do with the kids at Grace Hudson to make sure they're not just sliding for those 3 years? There's some different assessments they're using?
Yes. So they use the EDEL. Yeah, they use the EDEL, which is the Spanish version of DIBELS. And I don't present it because it's different. It's hard to look at in comparison. But they're monitoring how their students are doing on their basic Spanish. I'm trying to use the same acronym, literacy skills. And so that's what they do to monitor their students.
Trustee Mogart?
It's so hard to determine, maybe it's not for you, for me it is. It's hard to determine when you say Frank Zeke is performing super well. Is that because of the income of their students, of the fact that they have more two-parent households, that they eat dinner together without media on, that they have more book feet in the home of written word? Are we sure it's not, I'm not saying they have bad teachers. I mean, I'm sure they have great teachers. But how do we distinguish if it is the habits of the home as much as the teaching that's different? Maybe we're studying something, and that's not really even where the difference is.
That could be the case. Their demographics are very similar to our other schools.
Ethnically they are, but do we look at income and divorce rates? Living with a single parent?
We do not look at single-parent homes, but we do look at socioeconomically disadvantaged. They're slightly lower. They're at 69%.
And what's everybody else at, average?
70, well, it really depends. 72, 73, but Nokomis and Oak Manor are in the 90s.
Right, okay.
So, and I think if we go back to their attendance, if you saw they have good attendance, I think another thing is that it's a the neighborhood is close and kids get to school. You can see that in their attendance rates. But we do want to still look at what,
Of course.
I mean,
But I would just think we'd want to spend a little bit of time and money on those other addressing some of those other difficulties that students have because of the socioeconomic or whatever it might be, not just the teacher, because we can't expect a teacher to solve all the other problems that are coming at that child.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you look at where they arrive.
You don't trust it?
I don't trust it. I don't trust it because they're not measuring how many words that children has heard at home. You know, it takes a while for that to show up in scores.
So if there are no other questions.
We still have more data.
Well, we have a little bit
Oh,
more. I'm so sorry.
You're going over my time limit
we
here.
do want to share. We do want to share our ELA interim data. We've had lots of discussions around reading, and I do want to say we've been focusing on our core instructional practices of collaborative conversations, close reading, and evidence-based writing. That's our framework for literacy. And this year, we're really focused on looking at how do we support students from learning basic knowledge to actually transferring that knowledge, and what are those best practices based on Hattie's work. And we've learned a lot. We know we have a lot more to grow. But in terms of our ELA assessments, this is the first year that we have used STAR reading across the board as an interim assessment in K-5. And many teachers used it before, but we've systematized that. And what you're going to look at today is predicted proficiency on the Smarter Balanced assessment. Then for grades 6 through 8, we have iReady reading, which is a different system. It also has a prediction and on the Smarter Balanced. And then for grades 9 through 11, the interim assessment is a SBAC released item where it's on a 2-point rubric. It's a writing assessment. So our STAR interim assessment data shows from those are 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So one thing that we've noticed, we have improvement in our 5th grade at most of our grade levels. If we look at across the district, we went from 34% at proficient to 38%. And these are just predictions. They take a scaled score, so the students get a scaled score when they take this assessment. The assessment's about 25 minutes. It's online. And it focuses on reading comprehension. So, but what they have done is correlation studies to the scaled score that the student gets, and then correlated that to the Smarter Balanced assessment. And they've done it to also the PARC assessment. So some grade levels and at some sites we see progress, some are flat. On this one, 0 to 2 is yellow, and then anything above is green, and then anything below is red. And we, want to see a little bit more growth there, but we do have some sites that are growing. And when we look at comparing to last year, it looks like our 3rd grade last year was at 23%. So we're projecting based on this assessment, and we'll have our 3rd interim the next time, that we will go up in our SBAC scores. Our 4th is down 1%. Compared to where we were last year, and then our 5th grade is up. So people are working hard. The good part is we're getting this down systematically, and most of the teachers have been really positive about the assessment. They feel like it's working. And we just met in our last 2 leadership networks and went through some reports that teachers can pull from this and then use it for a collaborative planning process around what are some areas that we want to focus on in our next unit of instruction. So that's how we're working on using this data. Our iReady is another online assessment that's computer adapted. The way the proficiency is calculated is the estimates of standard met or above. The old system used to say proficiency, so it still comes out. And when we look at that, you can see 6th grade went down 5%. That window was, the 3rd interim window was December and January. And we did have an issue, a technical issue, but we got everybody back in there. But we're not happy to see that our scores have gone down, our estimates. What is different on this assessment, the way it's calculated, is they do expect, they haven't just done a straight correlation between the scaled score and will you be proficient. They're looking at different periods of time where you should be at. And so right now, we don't like what we see, so we haven't shared that. This will be shared at Next Leadership Network, and we're going to show them how to go through a planning process together. And they already do a lot of that, so. And then our ELA 9th grade. So the 0, 1, 2, it's a 2-point rubric. And so the two different colors are showing what percentage of the students got a 0, a 1, and then a 2. And you can see from the first to second interim, the 0 stayed the same, but we had students move from 1 to 2 to a level 2, which is that they were proficient in their writing. And then you can see 10th grade, the student scoring 0 went down slightly, but they had a good increase in the number of students scoring a 2. And the process, this is taken online. So they read the prompt, they read the passage, and then they read the prompt online. And then 11th grade, you can see they had a lot of gains. They had a high percentage of students scoring a 0, and then that decreased on the second interim. And you can see that students scoring a 1 and a 2 went up. And they're looking at student work and scoring that work. So we're getting our processes in place, and teachers are looking at the interim assessment data. We have, I think we're getting our ELA in place and that it's working in terms of our ELA interim assessments. And then math. So for math interim assessments, we didn't want to share those because we've had some difficulties making sure data is accurate due to scoring and percent completion. We had a couple issues this year. Our K-5 star is on, it's going pretty well. Our 6th grade math, we're using iReady. And then at the secondary level, we're using teacher-created interim assessments. But we did have a few issues with those, so we thought let's stay focused on reading tonight so we're not talking about all of that. We appreciate that.
But we are trying to get those worked out, so that's more systematic.
Any additional questions? Trustee Van Zandt?
Just quick, in the 11th grade,
Mhm.
am I reading this correctly, that in the beginning, 82% of the students were getting a 0?
Yeah, and it was it's a very challenging prompt.
That's what they're doing now. Now you have.
Right.
Yeah, and that prompt, if you look at it, it's challenging because it's asking the students to make an inference about what evidence the author used to state his point of view. So it's a challenging prompt. But the good part is
good improvement.
they've showed good improvement, and I think, when we look at our SBAC scores, we can see that students are doing well.
Trustee Van Zandt, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did. It's not really about the data, but it struck me when we were looking at this, the enrollment. Sorry, I'm getting tired.
Is your microphone on?
I don't know. Yes, it is. So, way back in the beginning, we have 2% of our students are foster youth by mid-year enrollment. So I guess my question was, do you know who is in foster care in real time? Or is it something you know at the end of the year that a child was in foster care during the year?
I think we usually know.
but Jason, I'll defer to you if there's
Well,
anything.
before I don't want to trap you, so let me ask the
Yeah.
second part of the question.
Sure.
The reason I ask is that in a different capacity, a school counselor told me they have no idea who is in foster care in their school, and I was alarmed, that's not exactly how it was put, but that they are not told who's in foster care in their school, and I was slightly alarmed because I couldn't figure out, is there a communication problem here? Is there a confidentiality issue here? Is it just this person?
Or is Trustee Van Sant trying to trap me?
I'm not trying to trap
I
anyone.
think that's the question.
I wasn't sure who I was trapping, and it wasn't really a trap. That's why I'm just asking.
Yeah, so it's marked incredibly clearly in Aries. So if you click on that student, it'll say that. If you go to
But how
our
soon does
demographics-
social services let you know that?
So Blythe lets me know as quickly as possible. We also identify as quickly as we can. There is foster focus, obviously, that you have, and as soon as we get the data, then we would know. Or if a student is coming in, meaning you could have a student who we already have the students pulled, there may be some time lapse there, as we know, but
Mhm.
most of the time we know as quickly as Blythe lets us know, or when the student comes back, because
And Blythe's never complained that we don't let her know within soon
By
enough?
we, you mean HHSA, not UUSD, correct?
Yes.
yes, because there's
Certainly
foster
not.
focus. and
Certainly not
separate.
UUSD.
So is it,
This we is-
and all the school sites have access, I don't know how Aries works, has access to that screen on Aries?
Yeah, absolutely. It's giant flags. In fact, we created a new system a couple of years ago, so it's very, very clear. So if you let me know who that person is, I can certainly
Well,
talk
I-
to them, but it's deeply concerning.
Okay.
But really, they'd have to be proactively notified, because otherwise you're not going to go through every student every day to see if it's flagged.
Yeah, I mean, you can have that.
But
The
you're
other
not going
thing
to
is
run
we
a
have-
query every morning.
No. But the thing is that if they come in and obviously identify that way, yeah, and then obviously we also are talking to our liaisons about it as well. And so then Mikkel is letting the sites know immediately as we know.
Okay, I'll talk to you about it offline.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I just wanna-
HHSA will clarify with Blythe
No.
that they're communicating quickly.
Okay, thank you. The
And-
second.
And
que-
Megan, just, this is mid-year, we look at the enrollment, and whoever is marked in Aries.
Right,
that's where
I
that
just was
number
concerned
comes
after
from.
this conversation that perhaps we weren't getting data until the end of the year, but it doesn't sound like that's what's happening, so perhaps this is a different kind of issue. I think the second question was, it may not be something we need to discuss right now, but I, like you, we're hoping to see improvement in our reading scores. And this isn't a new conversation, we've had this the last couple times we looked at the data. And I'm wondering if the district would benefit from kind of an outside assessment maybe of our reading program. I don't know if this is something that would be appealing, but I think we did hire somebody to look at special ed, and they came back with some recommendations that were useful. We've done that on occasion on issues that we are not totally clear what's going on. Just wanted to throw that out there as an idea if Deb and leadership thought that might be appropriate. I have no idea if there's people who do that kind of work. I'm sure there are, because there seem to be an awful lot of people trying to get money from school districts, so I assume that there probably is.
I will, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
It's not a bad suggestion. We're also going to, I've been looking for a school district to visit. So I think we found one that has similar demographics to ours and is making good progress and has a really good sound assessment system. So
Is it the
that's
one
a-
in Hawaii?
Yeah. That's a new development, so.
That was a joke
We
to the
have
reporter.
been. We don't travel to Hawaii, no. So anyway, we're looking at that, and we'll work on getting a visit going with our district site leadership team to go. And maybe a couple of board members might want to come with us.
And I do want to say we are making progress. It's just not as fast as we want.
Okay, if there are no other questions, no motion is needed, so we will just, do you all want to take a short break, or do you want to plow on through?
Should we do the ELD report real quick? And then
Yes.
Sure, let's do the ELD.
Barbara's report is short.
Great.
And we made her wait until 20 to 10.
Good evening, board members and superintendent. I'm glad to be here tonight to talk to you about ELD.
Barbara, can you speak into the mic, because it's.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about LPAC. LPAC is the new assessment for English learners. It started on February 1st. It's going full bore. I believe Nokomis will finish tomorrow. It's going very quickly. And the assessment is quite different than our old assessment. It is at a different time of the year than our old assessment, which used to be done by October 31st. And it is also based on the new standards. So they have different task types, and we will get different kinds of information. So when those results come back to you, we all have a little studying to do because the results will be with using new vocabulary and new terms. But it's going quite well. We're going to finish at the elementary, then we move to the high school, and then on to the middle schools. The LPAC is supported by our assessment cadre, so we have about 14 retired teachers who are going into our schools and helping us complete that task. So that is ongoing. We do have ELD plans. Now I'm moving on to a new topic. Sure.
I just really want to thank Barbara and Robin Gibbs, our district student success coordinator, who worked really hard on getting the LPAC going. It's a really big undertaking, and they've done a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. And I will pass that on to Robin because she's the one who's worked very, very hard on this as well. Just so you know, we have ELD plans submitted by site, and the student success coordinators are actively supporting those plans with their coaching. We're really looking forward to the adoption of a new K-8 curriculum that will embed English language development with content area learning. It's the new standards have been out for a while, and next year we will, at long last, have curriculum that matches those standards. So we're very excited about that. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about we've been very busy, very busy. January has been quite the month. But I wanted to tell you about a project that we've been involved in. We are in the second year of a 3-year collaboration with the California Language Learning Innovation Collaboration. This is CALI, referred to as CALI, and it's an opportunity for us to network with other schools. It's an outgrowth of the ongoing relationship we had with Stanford's Understanding Language Initiative several years ago. And we have benefited greatly from our relationship with these folks. We go 3 times a year and meet with other schools. Currently, I'm working on the academic language coursework, but we go and we meet with other schools and pick up great ideas from those schools. The information we learn from CALI is, even though it's dedicated to 4th through 6th grade, it really has impacted learning throughout our system. And we have benefited from the deeper understanding of the role of conversation and its relationship to reading and writing, because it allows students to clarify their thoughts, it improves their writing, and it improves their comprehension of text when there's conversation around these kinds of tasks. We had the opportunity to invite some of our Stanford friends up here to Oak Manor School in October, and Sarah Rutherford Quash, who's from Stanford, came up, and we had 8 classrooms open their doors to us. We had a little presentation in the morning. We visited the classrooms, observed the collaborative conversations and academic discourse happening there, and in the afternoon, Sarah gave us some professional development. And Oak Manor got so much out of it, they're just in the process of inviting Sarah to come back again before the end of April, because they want to continue that relationship with her. One of the other outcomes of CALI is that it's expanding a little bit. Katie tomorrow is traveling to Sacramento because Ukiah High's math program is entering into the second cohort of the Cali initiatives. So they're going to be getting 3 years of extended opportunities through Cali, and they'll be working with 14 high schools from the Elk Grove district in addition to others. So, and Elk Grove has a lot going on. So that's in a nutshell what we've been doing. I sent you a little report that you're able to read. Thank you.
Any questions?
I just want to say I appreciate the thoroughness of all those reports. It was a lot of good information.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah, thank you very much. So can we power on through, or do you all need a break? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Bye, Barbara. So next we have the strategic plan, action plan, LCAP update input.
On February starts our process for updating the LCAP, and it's the board's opportunity to bring up any items or issues. You have two pieces attached. One is a really simple item on what's funded through our LCAP, through supplemental concentration grant funding. The timeline for the LCAP development is included, and the strategic plan, action plan is there as well. So we did try and condense for the board the funded items into from a 37-page document to a 2-page document, just with the item and the amount. And we do anticipate getting more supplemental and concentration grant funding next year based on the governor's proposal to fully fund the local control funding formula, and because of our increased number of kids who qualify for free and reduced lunch. We're anticipating, we project that dollar amount to be about $700,000 of additional supplemental concentration grant funding. We think approximately $700,000. And so we will be getting input from stakeholder groups as we have done in the past. We need to consult with our 2 bargaining groups on our strategic plan, and so it is here for you. You have, Katie nicely put together just all the positions that we fund that are hired through Ukiah Unified on this document that has green at the top. It's a 1-pager. And then everything else, everything actually is on the front to back 2-page document. So is there any input that you have for us at this time?
So are you looking for input as in ideas that might be incorporated in this year's LCAP?
In next year's
Of
LCAP,
next year's
yes.
LCAP?
And then if there's anything that we're currently funding that you, especially as it relates to certificated positions that you think the board might not be interested in funding anymore, it would be good to hear that.
Okay, Trustee Nelson?
Do we need to necessarily spend all the money, or can we create a reserve like we have the 9%? I can't remember what it's called.
Fund 17.
Penny, do you want to respond to that? Turn the mic on, please.
Regarding the supplemental concentration grant, next year we'll reach the 100% funding. So if we don't spend all of our money next year, then it won't affect the amount of money the following year.
So then, Penny, you would be comfortable if we created some sort of reserve. The challenge for us with supplemental concentration grant funding as we move forward, if it doesn't get a cost of living increase, and we have a lot of positions funded in there, and we give a salary increase, it will be challenging to keep up with that. So I think it's not a bad idea.
And
To set some aside.
as components of ending fund balance, you can assign money, because what will happen is the minimum proportionality, meaning that that proportion based on the number of students that generate the money, we have to continue to fund services at that level. So if we don't completely spend it, then it'll have to be set aside because we'll still have the requirement to spend it.
I think it would be, it sounds kind of complicated. I think it'd be really nice if you guys were able to think about it for us, and I
Maybe
mean,
give you an
we might spend it all
example.
anyways, but I
Mhm.
think it's something prudent to think about,
Sure.
especially as things get more expensive.
Trustee Van Sant?
This may be a ton of work, so you may not want to do it. But I'm looking at this very nice two-page document. It'd be helpful to know if we're actually spending this money. I'm looking at, we set aside $50,000 for secondary after-school tutoring. For some reason, we never spend that? Or is it on track to being spent? I mean, I'm just picking a random example. I know we had the multi-agency foster meetings for teachers, principals, and counselors to attend those. It's not clear to me whether that's actually happening. So was that funding spent? That would be helpful, I think, as we figure out how we want to adjust this plan moving forward. If we put money into something that is not being spent, the question is it actually viable, or do we need to remind us to spend it?
We can give that information to the board, absolutely. What I've noticed over the past couple of years, and Katie, you could probably comment on this, the areas that we tend to not completely spend are hourly teacher pay. So let's say we are, we're paying teachers to be part of the leadership network, and they're doing extra work outside of their contract time. We tend to not fully spend that. We have to fully budget for it, but we tend to not fully spend things like that. That's just one example. Another example might be the PBIS teams at the school sites. We have to budget the max amount per teacher, but we don't always fully expend it. The activities are still being done. So that's kind of the biggest areas, I think, Katie, if I recall, over the last couple of years of money not being spent.
And we reduced those amounts when we planned last year, so we did look at monies that weren't getting fully expended and made those what we thought were reductions that were reasonable.
Trustee Nelson?
Sorry, I got caramel. I'd like to suggest that that staff consider creating a TOSA position that serves both the STEM and the garden programs. I think, pardon me, we currently have $54,000 as a partial TOSA funding for the garden and nutrition ed program. STEM is something that is growing in our district. Those two seem like they might be a good fit together to utilize that position best.
We could definitely bring something like that back to the board. And know that that position is not funded in the plan for next year, and so we would need to fund it. It was funded, I think the board voted to fund it for 1 year last year, so we will bring that back to the board, probably at the March meeting, because otherwise we need to give notice to an employee.
Okay, I think that would be great. After tonight's decision, I think if the sites choose to continue with the gardens, it's going to be important to support them. And then again, I'm repeating myself, but we
Yes.
have the STEM stuff, so.
We'll be happy to do that.
Trustee Barrett?
Yes, I would just like to add that I think if you did a STEM for elementary schools, especially working on the science standards, that you don't need a half-time person to oversee the gardens, but that's just my input on that. I think if they're decided on by sites, I think the principals could oversee it quite a bit.
So you're suggesting that the science TOSA, the main portion of that job would be science TOSA, and gardens would be a small portion of it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's just my suggestion.
Okay.
Also, I would like to revisit the two FTE certificated people at Eagle Peak that we had the grievance filed against us last year. We had talked about not doing that again, and I know you mentioned that you thought maybe it should be done for another year, but I thought we were pretty definite that that was going to be a one-year thing. So I would like to revisit that. And then I take it that with what we did tonight with the gate teacher, that is then taken care of here. Then I'd like to further look at UISA. I'd like to look at maybe reducing some of their staff. The family liaison. I think the very nature of the UISA program where they meet with the families on a very regular basis, that we maybe don't need to continue funding that. And also the TOSA at UISA, I think would be a place where we could make a cut, and maybe we've talked about several different areas of, what's the word, redirecting this money into some other areas. So, and another one that I would like to revisit is the behavior specialist at Oak Manor. I still don't quite understand that. I would like to know exactly what that person does. We have a behavior specialist for one school only. I'm a little puzzled by that. So
Okay.
just some things I'd like to look at.
Trustee Nelson?
I wanted to address Carolyn's suggestion about UISA. I just want to make sure that we keep the door open for all possibilities, and we may wrap that program into the high school and elementary school. So anyways, it sounded as if we were kind of set on keeping the school, but I just wanted to make sure that the door was still open.
Yeah, I didn't intend that. I just meant, I don't know what direction administration wants to take with UISA yet, because we haven't heard that. So I just wanted to say that I think if we keep the program as is, that we do look at some reductions there.
Trustee Van Sant?
This is not going to be popular, but I do, and I'm reminded of it by seeing the school resource officer on here, and I'm remembering that we paid for that first school resource officer through supplemental concentration grant, and I'm remembering that the second one was going to be paid for out of general fund through increased attendance. I understand from the data we're not seeing that yet, so I'm not, but I understand she's very popular. I'm not suggesting that we eliminate that position, especially since we went through all this already on general fund. But I do think we need to pay attention next year. And, you know, I'm willing to give it 2 years, but if that second school resource officer is producing benefits that are not showing up in school attendance, we should be clear about what benefits those are, and tie that to whatever benefits they are, not the one that you and the rest of the board perhaps thought was going to happen.
Trustee Montpere?
Was some of the funding for that, when we got the grant, the truancy grant, or none of that came out?
No,
None of that
It
position?
did not. It cannot, that grant cannot
Okay.
be used for law enforcement.
I would like to add funding academic competitions for clubs, since we decreased the gate budget, some of those academic clubs, competitive clubs, and also maybe a full-time communications person that we forgot. Yes, Trustee Van Sant. Yes?
I highly agree. Highly? Oh, God, I'm really talking strongly. And although I know the contract has been working out well, we really should look at them together. If the recommendation is to hire a full-time person, we may not need the contract in the same way. Just look at it as a full package.
Trustee Mulgard?
Just in terms of looking at it at a full package, in my experience, it's very difficult to hire a communications person who has experience. So hiring somebody with less experience and keeping a small contract for that mentoring to be happening, I find very effective.
Trustee Van Sant?
I do want to add to that. I think if we do hire a communications person, or if that is a recommendation, I'd love the opportunity to really talk about what the goals are for that position. I think what I'm thinking of, and I want to make sure we have clarity moving forward if we go in that direction, is not just communications in terms of press releases, which are very important, and newsletters and such, but communication internally too, in terms of celebrating our own successes internally. And some of the ideas that I keep hearing about at CSBA that sound so lovely around parent engagement through displaying and celebrating student work at locations outside of school settings. There was a model where they put student work up in the local grocery stores like Chavez Market or Talmadge store, where they have somebody worked with those stores to have a bulletin board that highlighted students and work in that neighborhood. It just seems such a wonderful idea of bringing, rather than trying to get parents to the school, going where the parents are already hanging out, and so they come in the school store and see their kids work on the walls. Just wonderful. But that takes staff time and work, and it felt like it could be. That doesn't need to be an educational professional who does that. So that's why I was interested in a communications person with that broad sense of communication and engagement.
Trustee Montpere?
I just wanted you to clarify, you were talking about stipends or money for academic competitions, or?
Yeah, for the robotics and science Olympiad, those sort of teams that have to fundraise, and Odyssey of the Mind have to fundraise a lot of money to go on to do these competitions, and I know the teachers work above and beyond the time that they're paid for, and it would be nice to support them, because there's all kinds of kids who participate.
Yeah, I have always felt that those people should get stipends. I've never understood why you got.
They do.
Oh,
It's
they
more
do.
because there's costs associated with the competitions, because you have to travel, you have to pay the fees and hotel rooms and.
But they do get stipends for the work they.
I believe they do at the sites.
Some do.
Yes, some do.
Would it be possible to get a list of that? I'd really like to know that.
Nicole?
I never knew that.
Trustee Mogart?
I guess I'm not sure Tim isn't the time to bring this up, but I want to talk with somebody about the idea that was floated a few years ago about adjusting the young parent program at the high school to be a combination young parent program and on-site child care for staff. Do you remember that? Don't know. Guess not. When we had worked out that budget with a couple of teachers who had young kids, and at First Five at the time, we were working out the budget, and we made it work. We made it balance with a combination of, I think it was, because the young parents were dropping down over time, I think we budgeted something like 3 kids of young parents and 5 kids of teachers or something like that, and teachers and staff and administrators, anybody who was on campus. And we made it budget out. So, and the reason I'm concerned is not so much about the young parents, because I think you're probably figuring that out and helping them figure out their situation, but I just think it's a huge retention for staff and a recruitment tool.
Okay. Trustee Mogart, do you have another, Trustee Montpere, do you have, no? Anybody else have anything to add or subtract at this first round?
I'll just add what I've been hearing from the board lately was figuring out how to increase student achievement, specifically around literacy and math. And so as we roll into additional things in our strategic plan next year, I really would like us to get totally focused on that. In whatever way we're going to do it. We're going to start some focus groups with some teachers next week. And I'm really hoping that we can, I know we're getting more money, but we can really focus our plan and not add a bunch of things beyond that.
Great. Trustee Vanciant?
I would just add to the priorities there of reading and math. I agree with that, but also, and I don't know if this is about money or it's something else, but the suspension and expulsion rates are also not going the direction we want them to. Again, I'm not sure if the solution.
Serious offenses, yes.
Right, I'm not sure if it's an issue around money or something else, but.
Weren't we talking at one point about having on-site suspensions so we weren't losing that ADA and so that kids weren't staying home playing on their Xbox all day long?
They're doing
And that's happening.
more robust. We thought we were going to get some additional funding, Title IV funding. We were told we were going to get it this year. We were going to use it on that and attendance incentives, and turns out
Disappeared.
we're not getting it this year.
Okay. So yeah, it just seems like a cost benefit, you know, if it doesn't help, it doesn't help, then maybe they are at home with their Xbox. But it just seems like a win-win to have them at school.
Okay, no action is needed on this. So now we are moving to the superintendent report.
It will be super quick. Chris Sweet mentioned we applied in collaboration with UC Davis. We applied for a grant. It was a very competitive grant to bring Dr. Tom Maney here to Ukiah. So we will be the host district of that program. It focuses on deep professional learning communities implementation. So all of our principals will be involved in that next year. And we'll also be inviting principals from other school districts to come to beautiful Ukiah and learn from an amazing educator. So we're excited about that. I also wanted to inform the board that we're making progress on increasing our K-9 detection program. And we sent out my newsletter today via email. Hopefully some of you who are parents received it. Otherwise, you should check to see what email address we have on file. I received it. I think it's today, maybe it went out. And it talks about the K-9 program. We'll also be doing a teleparent out to parents tomorrow. And we will be collaborating with the Sheriff's Department and still collaborating with UPD. We're hoping to start, I'm not even saying starting, because we already have that program in place, mostly at Ukiah High School. So we're hoping to start at our middle schools in the next 2 weeks. And we also have South Valley. So we are making progress there. Senator McGuire came to Eagle Peak last Friday to talk with the students about the legislative process, and he did an assembly for all 8th graders. I was there, and I just want to say how incredibly supportive he has been to our kids and families whose homes have burned, and he was just a breath of fresh air talking to the kids talked about 3 really important things in life. One is to work hard, one is to work together, and the third was to not take no for an answer. So, and I throw the respect part in there too, not take no for an answer respectfully. So anyway, he was great with the kids. He actually had them dancing, and it was pretty funny. And then just the last comment I will make, reducing budgets, it's always incredibly hard. It is never fun. I really appreciate and respect the board for the process that you've used here and the process we've used in the district. And I've said this before, I will say it again, how a district responds in a time of crisis, budget crisis, whatever the crisis might be, and the ability to continue to stay together and make budget reductions or get through any difficult time says a lot about a school district. And I think it's really important to continue to stay together and because in 10 years we will still be together, and how we work together is important. I think that's all I'll say.
Trustee Mogard?
My understanding is that there's been some teachers who are less enthusiastic about working closely with their principals around LPCs and PLCs.
That was a new.
It's a new acronym. No one's interested in it because no one knows what the heck it is.
What is it?
So my question is, when Dr. Tom Meany is here, I'm hoping you're just considering how you might incorporate naysayers or negative people into the process. And you don't have to answer it right now, but I just hope you're thinking about it rather than making it exclusively for leadership, because we all know that we got to bring people into the process if we expect them to turn around.
Year 1 is for principals only, and then year 2, teachers get added in. So
I would flip that in our district, given our history.
We are the way the grant is written, that is how it is written, and we will certainly, we've done a lot with leadership networks in our district, and I firmly believe, and research shows, that deep implementation of professional learning communities helps student achievement. People should not be afraid of it, and it is in our teachers' contract that we implement it, and that is part of the contract, and so it is my expectation that we will implement it, and deeply.
I don't think I'm being very articulate.
No, I'm just saying that part of the grant, it includes principals in the first year. And it's not just our school district, it will be 30 different principals from throughout the area. I understand what you're saying, but the grant is not written in that way.
And we can do things alongside a grant that fit
We
our
will
school district better.
We will still continue to implement a leadership network next year.
Trustee Barrett?
Just one quick suggestion, idea that I was thinking about today. We haven't heard how the lunch collection is doing. I'm curious how that's going.
Yes, we have made every effort possible to contact families, to help them know that it's really important to pay their bills, and we're to the point now where we will be sending some families to collections. It's about $7,000. It's about $7,000. Remember last year it was 70. So that's really good. Most families are responding, but there are some who are not.
So are we holding it to the $50 or 25? I don't know what it
Yes,
was.
I think it's $50 or something.
It's
40.
actually less than 5,000.
Oh, now,
Yeah,
that's good.
the list,
Okay.
And it'll be
Thank
the
you.
lower as graduation approaches.
Yes.
hopefully.
Trustee Mulgar, did you have another comment? Is there any board reports?
I just want to say one interesting thing, that I was in Fresno, and that part of the Fresno teacher settlement was that there will be no combination classes. I just thought, made me feel like I wasn't so crazy.
You are crazy.
Okay, next we have student expulsions. Do I have a motion to suspend the expulsion of student AA 28-2018 for the spring semester of 2018 for the fall 18-19 school year?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstaining?
I'd like to abstain for this and the rest of them.
Noes?
One no.
Is there a motion to suspend the expulsion of student BB 2818 for the spring semester of 2018 and the fall of 18-19 school year?
I so move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Megan's abstaining. Motion to suspend the expulsion of student CC 28-2018 for the spring semester 2018 and the fall of 18-19 school year?
I so move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to expel student DD 28-2018 for the spring semester of 2018 and the fall for 18-19 school year?
I so move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to suspend the expulsion of student EE 28-2018 for the spring of 18 and the fall 18-19 school year?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to suspend the expulsion of student FF 1-18-2018 for the spring semester of 2018 and the fall of 18-19 school year?
I so move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda. There are no changes, correct?
There is one change in H, or one addition, I should say, H1, Chad Ragowitz, first assistant girls track, the amount was missing. I don't know if we need to pull it, or if we can just state that we're adding $2,600.
The amount is $2,600. It was just left off.
I'd like to move the consent calendar as amended.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and moving to, for planning, are there anything for future agenda items?
I have one. I think that we need to talk about weed, and what our plan of attack is to help fund, cultural shift in our schools and hopefully a little bit in our community about, having weed in school. Our suspension rates are through the roof. We have a police officer that we're funding $90,000 for already. We just signed a $30,000 contract for dogs.
Yep.
Although we are getting help from, we didn't, I guess we didn't sign it.
If we need it.
I think it's really important that we have a strategic plan to talk to our board of supervisors, our city council people, and our state, and say, hey, we've got a problem. You guys changed the laws, and now we have rampant problems in the schools. I'm tired of suspending kids.
Okay.
Any other items?
I was just wondering if anybody else had an interest in, we don't have anything that's specifically what used to be called a CAP program, Child Assault Prevention, where you really educate children in how to tell when something is going on in their lives. And given a lot of the circumstances that are going on, both in the newspaper and nationally, I wonder if it's, I just noticed that my granddaughter's school was doing one. It was just a 2 or 4 day thing, but just training children that it's safe to tell somebody and training them how.
That is in the curriculum of second step, but I'm not sure at what age or if the modules that we're using are including that or not.
Yeah, I meant specifically dealing with that, not just more general emotional things, but.
No,
Yeah.
there's a second step curriculum, talk about touching, it's called. And it talks about, what's appropriate and inappropriate and how to tell somebody. But I'm not sure that we use those modules. It's different age groups. And so I'm not sure if there's an overlap, but that would be an easy curriculum to implement because people are already familiar with it.
And I believe it should start in kindergarten. It used to, and I think it's important at that age.
So would you like to find out if that's being implemented at all as a first step there?
I mean, if
Well, we
people-
implement second step, I just don't know the specific, I don't know all the detail of the curriculum.
Okay, could you let us know in a TGIF maybe? Would that be okay? And then we could go from there, or what do you think? Is that being cognizant of more work? Is that going to?
We can look at the curriculum,
Okay,
and then we can find out from the board what the next steps might be.
okay. Trustee Van Sant?
I'm sorry, this is out of line. I remembered my board report.
Oh, that's okay.
I just wanted to thank you, Deb, or whoever I'm supposed to thank, for, my daughter participated in Reproductive Health Week, and it was
yes.
just quite lovely. I heard long conversations about healthy consensual relationships, and they would say, oh, didn't you know she's in a healthy relationship with so-and-so? It was wonderful. So I just, from what I learned in the car driving for preteens for several hours, it sounded like a very successful program, and I really appreciate, as a parent, I was delighted that those topics were introduced in 6th and 7th grade to great interest on their part. So thank you.
Katie, thank you, and thanks to Chris and
Whoever.
Okay, what other planning, Debbie, that we have?
So we have agenda planning for Tuesday, February 27th.
Who's due for that?
I haven't done it in a very long time.
Certainly not. It's not since I've been the chair, you have not.
So
It's been a whopping 2 months.
Feels like a lot longer, let me tell you.
I bet it does.
I just did one, but I hadn't done one for a long time, so if someone else doesn't want to, I'd be happy.
I can do it.
Okay, do we have Megan and B? Is that
yeah, and maybe Gail can be back up because I don't have my work calendar. I'm not 100% sure I can do it. When is it?
Tuesday, the 27th at 12?
I'll have to confirm.
Okay, so you'll let Debbie know if you can't?
I will let Debbie know if I cannot.
Cannot.
Correct.
And is the meeting on the 15th?
15th? 13th, you mean?
8th. It's on the 8th, Tyler.
Oh, yeah, it's on the 8th.
March 8th.
The board meeting is on March
8th.
Exactly.
And what did we decide about the workshop on the 13th?
We canceled
We
it.
canceled it, okay.
And then I need to follow up with Steve on
Another date.
the next, when he's available.
I just wanted to say I'm going to be 45 minutes late on the 8th.
Just 45? Not 50 or 52, just 45?
I believe so.
We'll expect you at 5:15
The
then.
coast. It's going to be a fast drive.
Anything else, Debbie? Okay. Meeting adjourned 20, let's see,
24 minutes.
15 minutes past my target time. No, I had 10:10 at the very end. Yeah, not bad.